A month before my discharge, the world ended. My unit completely lost contact with the outside world. Not only were regular communications like radios and emergency networks down, but even all military radio frequencies were dead. Fortunately, the unit was stationed on a high mountain with plenty of natural barriers around the camp. We were relatively safe for now, but we were already at the end of our rope. If we wanted to survive, we had to go out and fight those monsters. As the head chef of the mess hall, I prepared one final dinner for everyone. Because in times of life and death, you need a full stomach. I prepared a special braised beef bone soup with my secret sauce. Drinking it would fill anyone with courage. When mealtime came, the dining hall was filled with the noisy chatter of soldiers. No one wasted words, just grabbed their bowls and chopsticks and started eating. The piping hot beef bone soup slid down their throats, its rich aroma hitting the top of their heads. At that moment, the company commander suddenly stood up, his hands pressed against the table as his voice boomed, rallying everyone's morale. "Brothers, it's time to go out there and give those bastards hell!" The soldiers immediately responded in unison, their shouts making the roof tremble. Everyone suddenly stood up, slamming their bowls and chopsticks on the table. I stood in front of the food service watching this scene, pleased to see the fighting spirit rekindled in everyone's eyes, then followed them as we charged out toward the camp gates with all our might. This battle, we either succeed or die trying. In a daze, my memory suddenly pulled back to that first day when the monsters appeared. That day had been just another ordinary day. After training ended, most people rushed to the field to play soccer. The shouts and footsteps mixed together in a particularly lively atmosphere. Some soldiers returned to the barracks in small groups to chat. Some slipped into the camp convenience store, browsing through the shelves, picking out drinks. A few young soldiers secretly gathered in a corner, sharing preserved meat they'd brought from home. When the mess hall staff were transporting that day's ingredients, I, as the head chef, was focused on chopping vegetables at the kitchen cutting board. The carrot in my hand was only half cut when mess hall private ER came in to report on the ingredient inspection. The mess hall was already short-staffed. We were busy enough just preparing meals for the entire battalion. But to make matters worse, the squid for that evening's stir-fry hadn't arrived. Unsurprisingly, the company commander had someone specifically send word, saying he had no appetite at noon and didn't want the fried vegetables we'd planned. After all these years as head chef, I'd long since gotten used to handling all kinds of unexpected situations. My mind quickly turned, and I soon had a solution. We still had plenty of leftover meat from the last battalion gathering. I immediately turned to my subordinate and ordered, "Let's change lunch to the company commander's favorite noodles, make chicken pasta, and replace dinner's stir-fried squid with pan-fried pork belly, guaranteed to satisfy everyone." But no one had noticed the deadly anomaly quietly breeding in the shadows. The mess hall staff responsible for transporting ingredients had already met their tragic end. And at the forest's edge, darkness was devouring everything. Dark red bloodstains spread into large patches of glaring filth. The mess hall workers' clothes were torn to shreds, their limbs already dismembered. A monster was frantically devouring their flesh and blood. The low sounds of chewing, the muffled cracking of bones and flesh, mixed with greedy swallowing sounds, particularly jarring in the quiet forest. At that time, having just finished preparing lunch, I was chatting with the youngest. He envied that I only had a month left before discharge. Asked me what I wanted to do after discharge. I thought about it and said I wanted to study cooking properly, then open my own restaurant. He sounded a bit surprised, saying the restaurant industry hasn't been doing well lately. I laughed and told him that during my time as a mess hall worker, I'd gradually felt this job was quite meaningful. When people eat my food and say it's delicious, I feel especially gratified. That's why I want to study cooking properly and bring that sense of fulfillment to more people. He then said I should come work at his restaurant afterward. I teased him, asking if he was crazy, saying the hierarchy in the restaurant industry is stricter than the military. I definitely won't work under him. That's what I said, but I was actually quite grateful to him. After chatting, I glanced at the seasoning containers and told him to go get some salt from the storage. Turned around and instructed the others that mealtime was approaching, so quickly tidy up the kitchen and don't delay serving time. I was secretly calculating that becoming an apprentice at a Japanese restaurant would also be a good choice. But no matter what, the essence of culinary art really has to be Western cuisine. Suddenly, strange sounds came from outside the door, and someone shouting for help. I immediately rushed over to open the door and check. The moment I pushed open the door, the monster's roar crashed into my ears. I instantly broke out in a cold sweat. When I clearly saw what that thing looked like outside, I couldn't help but curse. I saw the monster grab the mess hall worker's head with one hand and crushed it right on the spot. I was completely terrified. My body wouldn't stop trembling. How could this happen? This is too absurd. That wasn't a wild beast from the mountains. How could there be such a gigantic monster? The next second, blood splattered onto my face. The pungent stench instantly snapped me awake. I confirmed over and over, this wasn't a dream, everything was real. Glancing at the several mess hall workers behind me, I had only one thought: I had to get them out first. I signaled them to stay quiet and quickly crawl out the back door without making a sound. At that moment, the youngest who'd gone to the storage for salt came back. He walked straight in, completely oblivious to the monster nearby. The monster immediately sensed the new prey and suddenly turned its head toward him. The youngest let out a scream on the spot. I shouted for him to run while I rushed over myself, grabbed several kitchen knives from the ground and hurled them viciously at the monster, shouting, "Die, you damn monster!" However, the knives that struck the monster all bounced off. With a clang, all the knives fell to the ground, but after successfully drawing the monster's attention, the youngest also managed to put distance between himself and the monster. I suddenly looked up, glaring at the monster, deliberately provoking it, cursing at it to come hit me if it it dared. The monster was indeed thoroughly enraged, baring its teeth as it let out increasingly angry roars, and charged straight at me, opening its gaping maw. Seeing this, I instinctively ducked down, quickly diving under the table. The monster missed and thrashed around the kitchen. After searching everywhere, it couldn't find any trace of me. The youngest was so scared he was trembling while hugging his head, asking what that thing was. I could only whisper in response that I was just as clueless. Suddenly, the monster stomped hard. Feeling the tremor through the ground, I quietly lifted my head for a peek, only to discover its gaze had already locked onto me. The next second, the monster swiped its claw, smashing the table to pieces, and lunged at me again now that I had no cover. At this critical moment, the youngest scooped up a ladle of scalding hot oil. Seeing this, I immediately backed away. He splashed it forcefully onto the monster. The scalding oil touching the monster's rough skin instantly sizzled. Seems no matter how thick its hide is, it can't withstand high temperatures. Seeing the method was effective, the youngest quickly scooped up another ladle of hot oil. I was calculating that we needed to escape first and report this situation to everyone else. I had just whispered the youngest, when unexpectedly the monster suddenly swung its thick tail. With a crisp snap, that scale-covered tail struck the youngest hard in the chest. His entire body was flung by the monster. After falling to the ground, he stopped breathing entirely. I stared at this scene completely frozen. Now I was the only one left from the mess hall, and the monster before me had fallen into complete madness, its thick tail whipping around wildly like a steel whip, its mouth emitting deafening roars. If this continued and I couldn't think of any countermeasure, I'd eventually die here just like everyone else. No, I absolutely can't give up like this. Even if I'm the only one left, I'll fight to the very end with everything I have. I suppressed the fear in my heart and stared at the monster, carefully observing. Finally, I discovered something wrong with it. It seemed like it couldn't see because of the hot oil. Even the originally hard scales on its body had turned red and cracked from the burns. The skin underneath was exposed. This way, there might actually be a way to deal with it. I quickly calculated in my mind, I need to find something that can stab deep into its flesh. A thought instantly flashed through my mind. The youngest treasured sashimi knife. As luck would have it, that knife was right beside the monster's tail, and the monster was currently blindly turning its head searching for prey. If I ran away now, making even the slightest sound would be discovered, and that would be certain death. Rather than sit and wait to die, better to go all in. I picked up a shard from the ground and threw it in front of the monster. With a clang, the monster was indeed attracted, and immediately pounced toward where the shard landed. I took the opportunity to quickly grab the sashimi knife from the ground, and jumped up suddenly, stabbing down hard into the monster's cracked area. The knife sank deep into its body. The monster let out a pained roar. I gripped the knife handle tightly. Scalding fresh blood instantly sprayed all over my face. Wounded, the monster let out a shrill roar and collapsed heavily to the ground. Not giving it any chance to struggle or get up, I quickly pulled out the knife, then repeatedly stabbed several more times into its vital areas. Only one thought in my mind, I had to finish it off immediately. Absolutely couldn't let it have any chance to get back up. So with red-rimmed eyes, I frantically stabbed at the monster's vital points, until it completely stopped moving. At this moment, blood flowed like a river across the kitchen floor. Having exhausted all my strength, I collapsed powerlessly in the pool of blood. I can't believe I actually won. Suddenly a crisp ding sounded in my mind, followed by a string of strange information appearing, saying I had awakened, my class was novice chef level 1. Not only were there ability values like strength and agility, but even special skills and abilities were listed. It also said a unique talent was detected in me. I paid no attention to this strange thing, just staggered out to the front yard. What met my eyes were bodies everywhere. I was terrified. My first reaction was to run away quickly. After running all the way to the back mountain, I started thinking about what was happening. What were those monsters? And what were these inexplicable words appearing before my eyes? Suddenly a holographic projection appeared before me, showing an ongoing global activity called faction war, telling me to try cultivating my own faction or joining someone else's camp, and the system would give special gifts to awakeners who established factions fastest. It also showed I wasn't currently affiliated with any camp. This holographic projection looked exactly like a game system window, and I could even directly touch the interface. Could this be someone's sick joke? Faction war? Territorial battle? Damn it, I have no clue what's going on. So the immediate priority is to find survivors. After all, with everyone gathered together, our chances of survival would be somewhat better. I gripped the sashimi knife tightly in my hand, silently repeating to myself that I had to find a way to survive. I was almost discharged. Dying here would be too unlucky. Gathering my courage, I returned to the base. Following the direction of gunfire sounds, it seemed to be coming from the armory, and the gunfire was getting closer. I figured those who thought they couldn't beat the monsters would all run to the armory to grab guns for survival. So if I headed to the armory, there should still be a glimmer of hope. But just then, a monster suddenly spotted me. Damn! Where did it come from? I don't have any hot oil on hand right now. What do I do? In desperation, I instinctively activated my newly awakened skill chef's eye. A holographic interface suddenly appeared before me. The interface showed ingredient analysis complete. Obtained lowest tier cooking secret, lizard cooking method. Hint, the joint areas of lizards have no scales and are soft. As long as you master the technique, you can easily process them. The first key point is to slit the throat to drain the blood. Its carotid artery is close to the heart. Precisely stabbing it will sever the blood vessel and complete the blood drainage. I was shocked and confused. How could the cooking method for this monster suddenly appear in my mind? The monster monster let out a piercing roar and charged at me viciously. I just had to follow the method that appeared in my mind, right? But this way of treating monsters as ingredients, how could it possibly actually work? Damn it, no time to hesitate. Screw it, I'll fight it. Ding, the system prompted the trait lowest tier short blade proficiency was triggered. Attack proficiency increases when using short blade series equipment. I originally thought the knife couldn't possibly pierce its hard exterior, but unexpectedly gripping the short blade tight, I aimed at the monster's left armpit and stabbed hard. Following the system's suggested method actually worked. The monster collapsed on the spot, lifeless. I actually killed it with one strike, finally escaped danger. If it weren't for those system prompts, I'd definitely be dead by now. The system prompted again that I gained experience points, followed by a strange sensation in my body. This was the first time I'd felt my body being gradually filled with power bit by bit. The system explained chef's eye again. An excellent chef can process any ingredient, even materials never processed before, as long as the system determines it's an ingredient. The awakener can learn the correct cooking and processing method through observation. I was completely shocked. In the system's eyes, this man-eating monster was actually an ingredient? Immediately after, the system prompted again that I'd learned the cooking method for lizards. I couldn't help but growl out loud. Enough. This is insane, having to cook this kind of man-eating monster. What does the system mean by awakening anyway? Just then, footsteps came from nearby. Then a soldier spotted me. I quickly explained I was the head chef from the unit's mess hall. He recognized me and ran over quickly, saying survivors were currently gathering together, telling me to hurry with him to the armory, because who knows when the monsters might appear again, even urging me to run. I agreed and sprinted toward the armory with him. While running, he couldn't help asking where the rest of the mess hall staff were. My throat tightened as I told him in a low voice that they were all dead, and repeatedly apologized. He comforted me, saying this wasn't something I should apologize for, but I still felt terrible inside. They were all such good people, yet I was the only one who survived. Arrived at the armory, I saw they'd built simple defensive positions around the perimeter. The surviving people all looked exhausted. Their clothing was diverse, clearly from different departments. Either way, being able to gather with everyone finally put me at ease. Suddenly, the system prompted I'd obtained lowest tier cooking secret, learned primate cooking method. My pupils shrank as I was too shocked to speak. Primate cooking method? I instinctively looked at the survivors beside me, a terrible thought surging to mind. It couldn't be referring to these people, could it? At that moment, a bowl-cut soldier walked toward me, not seeing the holographic interface, telling me the commander wanted me to go in and report. Also told me the company commander was giving orders now, with the most senior personnel from each department gathered inside having a meeting. After hearing I'd survived, they wanted me to come in immediately. He added that after going in, turn left and I'd see a door. I nodded in acknowledgement and walked toward the building. I muttered to myself, were only the company commander left among the officers? Makes sense, the monsters wouldn't only attack regular soldiers. High-ranking officers naturally couldn't escape disaster either. The conference room door was open, so I pushed it open directly. Identified myself, saying the mess hall head chef reporting. The company commander saw me. A glint of joy flashed in his eyes, telling me to sit down first. I quickly responded and sat down. He turned to the others, saying to continue confirming the survivor list. I sat in the corner, my mind full of conflicting emotions. The company commander was already an incompetent, greedy waste of an officer. He used to constantly nitpick the meals I made, saying they weren't edible, or suddenly demanding this and that outside meal times, never considering the mess hall's work schedule. Never expected he'd now become the highest commander of our unit. The company commander looked toward the transport squad, asking if the most senior soldier from transport squad had arrived. The transport squad soldier responded with head bowed that the squad leader was dead. The company commander's eyes widened, unable to believe even he had sacrificed. I thought to myself, seems most survivors in this camp weren't the highest-ranking officers, but rather ordinary soldiers who were still mentally stable and reacted quickly enough. Then everyone reported remaining numbers one after another. Transport squad had 10 people left, radar squad had 7 left, mess hall squad only had me. After tallying, approximately only 100 people had survived. At this time, the communication squad leader raised his hand, saying he had something to report. The communication squad leader said before coming here, he'd confirmed with the recruits that no matter what they tried, they couldn't contact the outside world. All communications equipment was still down. Even military radio frequencies were completely useless. They'd tried every communication method they could think of, but still couldn't contact the outside. The conference room instantly erupted. Everyone talking at once. Some worried North Korea had launched an electromagnetic pulse bomb. Others countered that the military should have protective measures. Some cursed anxiously that at this rate everyone would die here. Everyone kept asking the company commander what to do now. I looked at everyone present. They were all panicking. At least we needed to clearly establish a goal so soldiers' anxiety could be somewhat relieved. And the company commander was currently the only surviving officer. Everyone was waiting for him to make decisions. But the company commander hemmed and hawed, saying he wasn't too clear either. Everyone was instantly stunned, looking at him in disbelief. Someone asked if even he didn't know what to do. How were they supposed to manage? Others accused him, saying, with the situation so critical, how could an officer say such things? The company commander bit his lip, as if making some kind of decision. Asked the communication squad leader if they really couldn't contact the outside world. Then proposed sending a few soldiers to the superior unit to attempt contact. Also said they needed to receive formal formal orders from the superior unit before they could legitimately take action. I immediately stood up to object, saying this was too dangerous. Our unit is stationed on a mountain 1,400 meters above sea level. It would take at least 2 hours to reach the superior unit's location. If we encountered a monster ambush along the way, the consequences would be unthinkable. Other soldiers also chimed in that the risk was too great. The company commander's expression darkened, scolding me for interrupting, then turned to everyone proposing they select a few volunteers to go. Hearing this, I sneered inwardly. This guy clearly didn't want to bear the responsibility of giving orders. After all, in this situation, making the wrong decision meant bearing corresponding consequences. That's why he'd use needing orders from the superior unit as an excuse to evade his own responsibility. Though the current situation was difficult, this absolutely wasn't the attitude a commander should have. I'd actually expected him to accomplish something. How foolish of me. The company commander looked around, asking if anyone had objections. Seeing no one objected, he presumed to say that before establishing contact with the superior unit. The remaining soldiers would stay at the base and await orders. Then the company commander moved to the next item, confirming the unit's current situation. I immediately reported the food supply situation, saying regular food had about 5 days worth, military emergency rations had about 6 weeks worth. However, considering the unit personnel had been drastically reduced, these supplies could sustain us for roughly 2 months. Then the soldier responsible for ammunition management reported, saying training ammunition had been used up in last week's shooting drills. Only standard combat ammunition remained. Though current ammunition inventory wasn't scarce, if there were no subsequent supplies, the situation would be hard to say. Next, everyone discussed various other matters one after another. I thought to myself that ultimately the core issue was still those monsters. Yet the meeting just ended like that. The most important matter wasn't mentioned at all. The company commander stood up, saying the situation was roughly sorted out, telling everyone to properly convey the meeting contents to their respective unit members after returning. I couldn't help speaking up, asking if he wasn't planning to discuss awakening. The company commander looked blank, asking what I was talking about so randomly. Also asked if there was some problem with everyone using guns to hunt monsters earlier. My heart sank. Why would they react like this? Could I really be the only awakener? I said nothing more and directly drew the sashimi knife from my waist, saying I had something to show them. The company commander instantly became alert, asking why I was suddenly pulling out a knife. I knew in my heart that even if I tried hard to explain now, everyone would most likely just think I was crazy. Anyway, I could even stab that ferocious monster to death. This wooden table before me was nothing. I took a deep breath, drew on my usual vegetable chopping feel, and hacked down hard at the wooden table. At first, the wooden table seemed completely unmoved. The next second, it collapsed with a crash. Everyone in the conference room was instantly stunned. Someone exclaimed that I'd cut through the table as easily as slicing paper. I put away the knife and slowly explained, saying after killing the monster, I experienced so-called awakening and could do this kind of thing. The company commander's eyes widened, his tone full of shock, asking if I really killed a monster and then awakened. I nodded, saying I found it hard to believe at first too, but everyone had seen it with their own eyes. We struggled at first to stay alive, but now in this situation we could die at any moment. Don't know when ammunition and food will run out. Don't know how many monsters are still out there. I have 3 days until my last pre-discharge leave. For me to die here would be bullshit. I want to survive, which means I must stick with everyone and strengthen this group. From now on, I'm going to turn all the brothers in this unit into awakeners. Just then, a soldier burst into the conference room in panic. He said big trouble. A whole horde of monsters was running this way. The company commander immediately snapped back, loudly ordering everyone to move quickly. Everyone return to your positions and prepare for battle. I silently cursed. Damn it, they actually come in packs. With an order to open fire, gunshots instantly erupted around the armory perimeter. I hid behind the defensive fortifications, secretly grateful these monsters seemed to only be attracted by living people's presence and only charged toward places with people. However, from the looks of it, it took about 1 magazine of ammunition to kill 1 monster. The company commander's roar echoed across the battlefield, telling everyone not to waste bullets. Try to aim before shooting. I observed quietly. Seems gun attacks could indeed injure them. But the problem was obvious. It took 20 to 30 rounds to kill 1 monster, and we'd already shot 10 today. At this rate, ammunition would run out quickly. We could manage for now, but without any reinforcements, we'd quickly reach our limit. The battle ended. The company commander shouted for everyone to maintain vigilance around the perimeter, confirm if anyone was injured, and have senior veterans from each squad report immediately after confirming their brother's conditions. After counting, 2 more brothers had been sacrificed in today's battle. I asked the soldier beside me how to handle these 2 brothers' bodies. He responded that there was a cemetery behind the unit. In situations like this before, they'd usually put bodies in body bags and bury them there. Just like that, another battle with monsters ended. And the company commander also began taking action to find volunteers to go to the superior unit and attempt contact. 2 transport squad soldiers voluntarily stepped forward, saying they could find a vehicle with sufficient fuel, and they'd also brought plenty of ammunition to deal with monsters encountered along the way. The company commander nodded in agreement, saying he'd send people to cover their vehicle's departure from the unit. Watching their figures prepare to depart, I calculated inwardly. Now was time to properly discuss how to increase awakeners. I first found my fellow countryman, the radar squad leader, and had him gather some soldiers, told them about my awakening and how to achieve awakening, pointed out they were all shooting from a distance. Perhaps the difference in awakening lay here. I speculated that perhaps monsters released some kind of energy when they died. You had to be close to absorb it and complete awakening. After hearing this, the company commander frowned and asked, meaning we have to fight monsters in close combat? Then asked again. The monster weak point I mentioned was the armpit. I didn't know that before awakening, right? I explained that earlier I'd splashed hot oil on the monster, and after its outer skin cracked from the burns, I took that opening to stab in. The company commander looked troubled. saying, "Isn't this tantamount to suicide?" The radar squad leader immediately clapped his hands, proposing we follow this line of thinking. Anyway, a few bullets can hardly kill a monster completely, so instead shoot them until they're in pain and powerless. Then send someone when they're near death to stab hard at their weak point. The company commander pondered a moment, saying then use bayonets to deal with them, have the equipment squad use grinding tools to sharpen bayonets, ensuring a killing blow. The radar squad leader nodded in agreement, saying with bayonets the rifle barrel is longer, much safer than my sashimi knife. I thought to myself that my countryman, the radar squad leader, could always systematically cut to the core of problems. He truly had strategist qualities. I turned to him saying, "I'll leave things here for you to coordinate and manage well. I need to go cook." The radar squad leader looked astonished, asking in this life or death moment I still wanted to cook. I responded matter-of-factly that precisely because it's a critical situation, we need to eat properly. Only when full do you have strength to fight and resist monsters. Besides, everyone missed lunch, but dinner must be served. I looked at the company commander, asking if I could go to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The company commander nodded in agreement, and even assigned 2 soldiers to assist me. I set mealtime for 7 p.m., having everyone take turns eating to avoid concentration during meals, causing defensive gaps. Also asked the senior veterans to thoroughly convey the awakening-related content, and the plan to kill monsters at close range to every single brother before mealtime. On the other side, the 2 soldiers heading to contact the superior unit had already driven off. One focused on driving while the other gripped his gun tightly, vigilantly observing the road conditions. I silently prayed in my heart, only hoping they could avoid monsters and safely reach the superior unit. Meanwhile, I'd already arrived at the kitchen. I felt cooking had become incredibly easy. Preparing meals for this many people alone, I didn't feel tired but rather unusually comfortable and smooth. Could this be the effect of lowest tier cooking proficiency? Originally worried I couldn't handle such large-scale meal prep alone, but now it seemed completely not a problem. System prompts kept popping up in my mind, showing my cooking ability values were all rising slightly. Also mentioning that after consuming this dish, within 1 hour strength +1, agility +1. Immediately after came another system prompt, showing I could add the Skill Master Chef's special sauce. An excellent chef can adjust diners' emotions through special sauce. I stared at a warm energy suddenly gathering in my hands, suddenly understanding. Using this ability, I could adjust the emotional state of those who ate the food to some degree. Right now, everyone was panicked because of the monster threat. I hope to help everyone feel a bit more at ease. Added Master Chef's special sauce with a sense of security to the food. Dinner preparation was complete. Mealtime arrived promptly at 7. A soldier held his tray and eagerly took a bite. I sneaked a glance at him, muttering to myself, does this food actually work? From external appearances, all the soldiers after eating showed no visible changes. This made me doubt the abilities the system claimed. But before long, a soldier after eating his fill gave me a thumbs up. He said he'd been panicking and on edge because of those monsters, but now after eating his fill he suddenly felt much better and was full of motivation again. My heart leaped with joy. Seems this dish wasn't without effect, though I'm still not sure if his ability values actually increased. Being able to soothe everyone's tense emotions and stabilize morale was already a pretty good ability. Just as everyone was eating in succession and the atmosphere slightly relaxed, suddenly a huge crashing sound and urgent commands came from outside. Damn it! Are the monsters here again? They really won't give us even a moment to breathe. Everyone rushed together toward the living quarters where the monsters appeared. The gunfire along the way gradually decreased. When I arrived at the scene, the soldiers were gathered together discussing animatedly. I pushed through and urgently asked what happened. A fellow soldier said when everyone saw the monsters, they chased after them together. Just as I'd repeatedly emphasized, the top priority was getting everyone to awaken, so everyone didn't blindly pursue but instead worked together to capture them. After a fierce struggle, they successfully subdued 2 isolated monsters, my fellow soldier said while pointing at the ground. I quickly stepped forward to confirm whether these 2 monsters were still alive. Just as I expected, when it came to awakening, no one dared to step forward voluntarily. Seeing this, I nodded to the communications squad leader, who responded by stepping out from the crowd. He gripped a sharpened bayonet tightly, volunteering to be the first to attempt awakening, and our previously agreed plan was for the core personnel from the meeting to awaken first. If we directly told other soldiers they had to get close to monsters to awaken, they definitely wouldn't dare try. Better for us to successfully awaken first and prove through action it wasn't dangerous. That way it'd be easier to promote later. And at this moment, the communications squad leader stabbed the monster to death with 1 strike and successfully awakened. He touched the interface before him in amazement. I quickly asked him if the system window had appeared. The communications squad leader smiled broadly. He said this feeling was awesome, a strange energy coursing through his entire body, filled with a sense of power. I excitedly shouted that he'd succeeded, telling everyone to look at the electric current flickering in his hands. His class was mage, his specialty was lowest tier electrical manipulation ability, and his skill was using electric shock. I pondered to myself, did the system determine classes based on each person's latent talents? In any case, this confirmed it. Killing monsters at close range with your own hands completes awakening. Having witnessed a successful case firsthand, everyone's worries and fears should lessen somewhat. Immediately after, my fellow countryman stepped forward voluntarily, saying he'd try next. I didn't forget to remind him to be careful and aim for the weak point in the armpit, then called out to the surrounding soldiers, telling everyone to focus on watching the entire awakening process. My fellow countryman nodded and walked toward the monster step by step, but when he actually got close, he inevitably felt apprehensive. Actually having to personally kill such a large monster, anyone would be a little scared. After all, it was only barely alive. alive, not completely dead yet. Suddenly, the monster let out a low howl. My fellow countryman instinctively stepped back, couldn't help cursing under his breath. He forced himself to stay calm, scolding the monster in a low voice to stay still, then slowly raised the bayonet, about to stab down. Just at that moment, the monster suddenly opened its eyes wide. He was startled, his hand shook, and the bayonet fell to the ground. The monster seized the opportunity to suddenly open its gaping maw and lunge at him. My fellow countryman had no time to dodge. The monster bit down on his calf in one bite. My fellow countryman instantly lost his balance and collapsed straight to the ground. Seeing this, I quickly shouted for him to pull himself together, but he was already scared stiff. That monster gripped his leg tightly and wouldn't let go. Amid our shouts, he finally snapped out of his fear, and the monster still stared with blood-red eyes, locked onto him tightly. The communications squad leader beside him panicked seeing this and wanted to step forward to help. I immediately stopped him, making clear that this step had to be completed by him personally killing the monster to awaken, then roared at my fellow countrymen, "Hurry up and finish off this monster." He endured the severe pain in his leg and struggled to grab the bayonet, then used all his strength to stab hard into the monster's weak point. The monster let out a shrill scream and immediately released its grip on his calf, then collapsed heavily to the ground, completely lifeless. Only then did I finally breathe a sigh of relief, my back already soaked with cold sweat. Everyone around was stunned, speechless for a moment. He supported himself with the bayonet and barely managed to stand, both legs still trembling non-stop. At this moment, the system notification sounded, congratulating him on awakening. His class was novice astronomer with luck as high as 20% in his ability values. I immediately shouted to the surrounding soldiers, telling them to quickly call for medics to prepare, then stepped forward to support my fellow countrymen. A smile appeared on his face. I patted his shoulder, praising him for doing well. He looked down at his bleeding calf, saying the monster was near death so it didn't have much strength, didn't bite his leg off. I was glad nothing serious happened to him and supported him toward the treatment room. This heart-pounding commotion thus ended. We now had 2 more awakeners in our unit. Next, we could formally build an army that could fight monsters even without bullets. But problems also arose. When the soldiers present at the time spread word of my fellow countrymen's entire awakening process, the unit fell into chaos. Most troublesome was the appearance of quite a few senior veterans refusing to awaken. Among them, the most unexpected was the ace soldier from the equipment squad. He kept backing away, claiming he absolutely couldn't do it. No matter how much the communication squad leader tried to persuade him, he remained unmoved. But our current predicament simply couldn't tolerate any retreat. To survive this crisis together, awakening was the only way out. As a senior veteran, he should have taken the lead and set an example. But he stubbornly refused, his heart full of fear of accidents, serious injury, or even death. The surrounding soldiers couldn't help discussing. He was the ace of the equipment squad. Heard the equipment squad leader even urged him to run for corporal. Supposedly his abilities were definitely outstanding enough. From what I knew, though he was tall and burly, his courage was surprisingly small. Forget watching horror movies. He didn't even dare do routine high-altitude maintenance. I secretly worried, if even senior veterans openly refused, others might follow suit later. The communication squad leader, seeing persuasion was ineffective, darkened his expression and said, "Suit yourself." The equipment squad ace was stunned, then overjoyed. But the communication squad leader's tone turned sharp, saying seriously that he shouldn't expect to enjoy senior veteran treatment afterward. After all, being a senior veteran wasn't just a title of military seniority. You had to step up at critical moments, protect your juniors, shoulder the responsibilities you should bear. And he chose to retreat, so naturally he'd bear corresponding consequences. I silently calculated in my mind, on this battlefield where lives were at stake, the junior soldiers would absolutely never follow an old bird who lacked courage and dared not take responsibility. The equipment squad ace's face turned pale, then flushed, silent for a long while, finally saying he understood. Alarm bells immediately rang in my mind. This matter absolutely couldn't end so carelessly. If we just let him retreat like this, other soldiers would definitely be affected. Then more and more people would refuse to awaken. Thinking this, I quickly pulled the communications squad leader aside, then told the equipment squad ace to return to his post first. We'd notify him of subsequent arrangements later. I told the communication squad leader straight out that for the unit's morale, we absolutely couldn't give up on him. I understood why he was angry, but this matter absolutely couldn't end like this. The communication squad leader frowned helplessly, saying the guy refused no matter what. We couldn't force him to his death. I stated seriously this wasn't just about the ace alone. His retreat would bring a chain of negative effects to the entire unit. I then asked him in return, right now quite a few people were secretly calculating escape from the unit, right? The communication squad leader was silent for a moment, saying with monsters appearing everywhere, it's normal for people to want to escape. I countered that we're stationed deep in the mountains. They couldn't easily escape the unit, and outside was full of monsters. After all, soldiers gathered together with defensive fortifications were safer than outside. But over time, someone would inevitably lose patience, worrying more about family left outside. Once morale scattered, the unit would be hard to lead. The communications squad leader sighed softly, saying that wasn't impossible. Precisely because of this, if we wanted to survive, we had to build a sufficiently strong unit. Only by making everyone feel staying here was safe and hopeful would they willingly stay and fight together. But once rifts formed within the unit, it would only end in fragmentation, combat power would weaken more and more, and in the end, no one could survive. The communications squad leader said somewhat helplessly that quite a few people privately expressed wanting to withdraw from the awakening plan. I immediately emphasized, precisely because of this, we absolutely couldn't tolerate any exceptions. If we made an exception for one person today, soldiers who couldn't do it would definitely spring up like bamboo shoots after rain. By then, awakened soldiers and those unwilling to awaken would likely develop conflicts and rifts. The communication squad leader sighed, but the ace would rather accept humiliation than awaken. He was at a loss. loss, but I said confidently that I had my methods. The communications squad leader hesitated, saying, "Trust me once, but this won't be easy. No matter how hard I had to try. After all, this concerned the entire unit's safety. If I had a combat class, I might really abandon the unit and leave alone, but I happen to be a chef. Just looking at this job title, you could tell it was a support class unsuited for going solo. To maximize my class's utility, the Corps was still cooking for everyone, using food to enhance everyone's abilities and soothe everyone's emotions. Only by making the unit stronger and stronger did I have hope of survival and could realize my dream of opening a restaurant." Thinking this, I rushed all the way to the kitchen. After washing my hands clean and tying on an apron, I prepared to simply make some fried rice. First, ingredients were easy to obtain, and second, it could help him quickly replenish energy. I took out onions and carrots, cutting them into uniform small cubes. At this time, system prompts kept appearing in my mind, saying the main ingredient meat quality was poor, the dish's ability values decreased slightly. Also prompted this dish was exclusive to a specific target. When that target consumed it, effects would be additionally enhanced. I paid little attention to these prompts, just skillfully heated the wok with oil, and began stir-frying. The system prompted that through special sauce I could change the emotional state of the consumer. My heart leaped with joy. Having this effect was enough. Finally, I evenly drizzled special sauce over the fried rice. After everything was ready, I had someone invite the equipment squad ace to the dining hall. Before long, the equipment squad ace nervously entered the dining hall, asking what I wanted with him. I gently pushed a bowl of steaming fried rice in front of him, saying this was fried rice specially prepared for him. His eyes were full of confusion. I smiled, saying I understood his feelings very well, but meals still had to be eaten. He responded somewhat embarrassed, picked up the spoon, scooped up a big spoonful of fried rice and put it in his mouth. I thought to myself this was special food containing courage. Feed his stomach first, then warm his heart. He ate in big mouthfuls, quickly finishing the bowl of fried rice. Then he stood up and bowed deeply to me, his tone sincere as he apologized. I quickly helped him up, comforting that being afraid was human nature, nothing to feel guilty about. He was silent for a while, then slowly spoke about being timid since childhood. Hearing that exercise and training would build confidence, he kept persisting in sports and specifically practiced martial arts, but the timidity in his bones still couldn't truly be changed. I suddenly understood, so that's how he got all those solid muscles. I said softly that to overcome his shortcomings, he'd already put in much effort and suffered quite a bit, right? He nodded, saying he'd finally gained everyone's recognition and became the equipment squad's ace. Was even recommended by the squad leader to participate in professional corporal selection, never expected to encounter something like monsters. He said I was really amazing, watching brothers get killed by monsters with my own eyes, yet still able to muster courage to face it head on. I couldn't help interrupting, saying actually I was also very scared. Hearing this, he looked up in surprise. I continued saying if I did nothing, I'd become food for the monsters. That monster's eyes had been burned by hot oil, which gave me a bit of chance to muster courage. Probably survival instinct guided me in that instant, making me forget fear and just want to survive. What's more, I only had a month before discharge. Dying here would be too much of a loss. His eyes flickered, his tone filled with admiration, saying in such life or death moments I could still persist with my dream. Truly remarkable. I smiled, saying I just mustered courage for that one instant in my own way. Now, no matter what, I want to survive together with all unit members. Other veterans also held the same feelings, mustering courage together to face monsters. He could actually do it too. The equipment squad ace took a deep breath. His originally confused eyes gradually became firm. I secretly rejoiced in my heart. He suddenly developed subtle confidence. Could the dish's effects be taking hold? I saw him dash out of the kitchen the next second, shouting loudly that the next monster would be handled by him. Then came scenes of him clenching his fist to punch the monster. Actually fighting the monster barehanded? The soldiers were all stunned, discussing among themselves that he'd gone crazy. The communication squad leader asked me in confusion what I'd said to him to make him so frenzied like he'd lost his mind. I muttered to myself that indeed this special sauce's effect was too strong. Though a bit risky, this was the only opportunity for him to break through himself. Right now I could only observe from the sidelines. I saw the monster extend its sharp claws toward the equipment squad ace. He gritted his teeth and gathered all his body strength, and actually blocked the monster's claws barehanded, then immediately reached out and tightly grasped the monster's body. The monster obviously didn't expect this human before it would be so fierce. Shock appeared on its face. The equipment squad ace then roared, and with a burst of force slammed the monster hard to the ground. Seeing this scene, the surrounding soldiers instantly became energized, praising him as worthy of being the equipment squad ace with the unit's strongest physique. Suddenly a soldier shouted loudly, telling everyone to look quickly. Everyone hastily focused their gaze. Unexpectedly, the equipment squad ace directly opened his mouth and bit down on the monster, and forcibly bit off a chunk of flesh from the monster's body. The monster immediately let out an extremely shrill scream. This was probably the first time it encountered being bitten alive by a human. Now the surrounding crowd was completely stunned. I watched the equipment squad ace's crazed appearance, secretly regretting in my heart. Seems I really added too much special sauce earlier. Never expected this dish's effects would be this good, directly pushing someone to become desperately reckless. He was still picking up stones from the ground, randomly smashing the already lifeless monster. That monster should have been thoroughly dead by all accounts, but this crazy energy in him hadn't dissipated at all. For a moment, everyone stood there stunned, not knowing what to do. Seeing this, the communication squad leader really couldn't watch anymore and told everyone to quickly stop him, but the soldiers beside each looked at one another. No one dared step forward. After all, he seemed crazy right now. What if he even hit his own people? Fortunately, the equipment squad ace stopped his actions at this moment. The system notification sounded, congratulating him on awakening. Only then did he wake as from a dream, staring blankly at his blood-stained hands, then burst into loud laughter. Shouting that he'd also awakened, a blue window appeared before his eyes. I breathed a sigh of relief and stepped forward to pat his shoulder, laughing that this kid really scared people to death just now, actually able to kill a monster barehanded. The surrounding soldiers also excitedly rushed over, praising him as worthy of being the strongest person in the unit. Immediately after, the equipment squad ace grabbed my arm excitedly, kept saying this was all my doing. At this moment, the communications squad leader frowned and came over. The surrounding soldiers also looked puzzled, asking me what I'd done to him, how I'd turned that guy into a battle maniac. Facing everyone's questions, I answered lightly that I just made him some good food to eat, and patiently listened to him pour out all his troubles. I went on to explain that human hearts are like this. Can't underestimate the power of listening. Sometimes when you speak what's in your heart freely, many things can be easily resolved. But the communications squad leader still looked incredulous, saying how could he be persuaded so easily? I silently responded in my heart, right, just speaking a few words, how could he truly change completely? In the end, it was all thanks to my skill effects, but this secret couldn't be revealed now. This was different from when I cut the table to show everyone that time was just demonstrating strength, easy to explain. At this stage, if I carelessly revealed the truth about my skills, I might very well be treated as a dangerous element. So I quickly changed the subject, saying I never expected a gentle-natured coward to awaken as a berserker type. Then I asked them in return, didn't they think this kind of super combat power that loses reason was a bit too dangerous? Hearing me say this, the communications squad leader responded that we're now living days gambling our lives for survival. Having one more powerful combat force was always a good thing. I immediately nodded in agreement, saying from now on, no matter whose turn it was to awaken, I'd make special dishes to give them some confidence. But the communications squad leader had some concerns, saying food supplies weren't abundant to begin with. Making special dishes would consume them too quickly. I explained not to worry, most remaining food was emergency canned goods. Other fresh ingredients would spoil if not consumed soon. That would be wasteful instead, so before fresh food spoiled we should use it up. Needed to make more dishes for everyone to eat. Actually thinking carefully, the days when everyone could eat a proper hot meal peacefully were probably numbered. Thinking this, I sighed inwardly. Those emergency canned goods or combat rations, I really didn't know how to apply my class skills to handle them. Just then, a soldier's urgent shout suddenly came, saying we absolutely couldn't let the monster escape. Must keep it for the next person's awakening. Seems with the equipment squad ace as a successful example, the unit awakener increase plan indeed became much smoother, but an accident quickly occurred. Someone directly killed the monster. That soldier looked guilty and kept apologizing, saying he hadn't controlled his strength properly for a moment, and the veteran in charge of command was so angry he stomped his feet, loudly shouting this attempt failed again. I thought to myself, seems the awakening plan wasn't that smooth. Actually, the biggest problem was, it was very difficult to precisely weaken monsters to a near-death state with just one breath left. Because most monsters would burst out with amazing strength and desperately struggle before near-death, their aggression would actually become stronger. We simply had no way to safely approach. And the premise of awakening was ensuring safety. In the end, we couldn't have soldiers needlessly sacrifice themselves just to complete awakening. Therefore, we could only temporarily slow down the speed of increasing awakeners and patiently wait for the right opportunity. Just when everyone was about to lose patience, suddenly someone shouted success. Someone really managed to leave a monster with just its last breath. My heart immediately leaped with joy. Seems some people could do it after all. That monster lay on the ground barely alive. The communication squad leader immediately commanded loudly for the person responsible for the final strike to step forward quickly and complete the awakening ritual. Then immediately asked whose turn it was. Someone in the crowd immediately responded, saying it was Private Shu from the transport squad. Private Shu took a deep breath and walked out from the crowd. I reminded him from the side that he just needed to aim for the monster's armpit weak point to attack. His tone was firm as he said don't worry, he'd secretly practiced many times, but his eyes still showed nervousness. He gripped the bayonet tightly and carefully walked forward, aiming at the monster's armpit and stabbing down hard. The instant the bayonet penetrated, the monster suddenly twitched and still wanted to struggle. The two instantly fell into a stalemate. Private Zhu gritted his teeth and forcefully pushed the bayonet deeper. The monster's twitching gradually stopped, and it became completely lifeless. The system notification sounded, congratulating him on awakening. Private Zhu excitedly shouted that he'd succeeded. A window appeared before his eyes. His class was marksman. I happily said excellent, now we had 5 awakeners. Just then, system notifications suddenly sounded continuously. Private Shu shouted in panic that strange sentences appeared on his window. The window displayed that a group had been established. It was the minimum combat unit of a 5-person group, while also marking Group 3 in the entire region. And the group number of this region's Group 1. A string of incomprehensible messages kept popping up, and the other 4 awakeners also saw identical windows before their eyes. The system also synchronized prompts that achievement unlocked, strength in numbers. Because we succeeded in forming a group faster than other teams, the system gave special rewards of 10 bottles of growth elixir. The description said using it would increase experience gained by 500% for a certain period. I made an immediate decision to have all awakeners assemble first, hold an emergency meeting to properly research the group and elixir matters. After entering the temporary conference room, the communications squad leader spoke first, saying he felt the current situation was becoming more and more like a game, classes, groups, and reward items. Private Shu immediately agreed, also saying so-called groups seemed to require gathering 5 awakeners as the formation condition. I looked at the explanation in the window, calculating in my mind that according to the information displayed, using this growth elixir could make people grow faster. This was definitely excellent news for enhancing our combat power. But the equipment squad ace frowned, saying he was more concerned about the so-called 3rd place. Didn't that mean there was 1st and 2nd place too? Could there be monsters and awakeners in other units, or places outside units as well? The communication squad squad leader's expression instantly became grave as he nodded, saying it seemed so. The situation was more complex than they thought. As soon as the outside situation was mentioned, Private Zhu's emotions immediately dropped, asking what about their families. Even the military had become like this. How terrible would the outside world be? He didn't dare imagine. I looked at everyone's worried expressions, knowing in my heart that once family was mentioned, no one could think calmly. So I quickly spoke to comfort them, telling everyone not to think the situation was too terrible. Worrying about the outside situation was understandable, but our own safety was the top priority now. Getting third place at least meant we were ahead in awakening and forming groups. That was our advantage. First, ensure our own safety, build this place into a solid stronghold, then consider finding family and exploring the outside world later. What we should do now is take care of ourselves first and survive properly. Everyone was silent for a moment, all lowering their heads to think about my words. The communications squad leader was first to nod in agreement. Only by surviving first did we have a chance to rescue and find family. If we couldn't even protect ourselves, thinking more was useless. Then he wondered that group members were actually only 5 people. Didn't this mean most people who hadn't awakened weren't counted as group members? Private Zhu was also somewhat dissatisfied, saying though they awakened to survive, this kind of differential treatment rule was a bit annoying. I silently agreed in my heart. What they said made sense. Just the world suddenly becoming like this was already panic-inducing enough. Now there was even differential treatment. Only awakeners could be incorporated into groups and enjoy system recognition. This was like saying non-awakened people didn't count as effective combat power and weren't valued at all. This kind of setting would inevitably create new rifts within the unit. The communications squad leader, seeing this, quickly changed the subject, laughing and asking if Private Zhu's class was marksman. Seems classes really could reflect one's specialties. Private Zhu scratched his head somewhat embarrassed, explaining his advantage was that the window said when shooting, it would automatically enhance shooting accuracy and power, much more powerful than usual. The communications squad leader immediately frowned, saying strengthening only when shooting, wouldn't that be problematic? Private Zhu immediately patted his chest in assurance. Regular soldiers needed 10 bullets to kill a monster. He only needed 2 bullets to solve it. This way could save quite a bit of ammunition. I thought the group differential treatment issue would definitely have solutions later. Better solve immediate problems first. So I immediately proposed temporarily having Private Zhu serve as the core role for subduing monsters, specifically responsible for weakening monsters to near-death state for others to awaken. Everyone agreed one after another. Fighting spirit rekindled on their faces. I breathed a sigh of relief. We had no time to be discouraged. To survive, we had to keep moving forward step by step. After this, the number of awakeners in the unit indeed grew steadily, but there were still quite a few soldiers who refused out of fear. Whenever this happened, I'd actively invite them to eat something with me, and every result was identical. Those soldiers who originally firmly refused to awaken, as long as they ate my cooking, would seem like different people, becoming exceptionally brave, even somewhat radical. Before long, the communication squad leader suddenly wanted to have a private chat with me. I knew this time I couldn't dodge his questioning. The communication squad leader said straight out that I was hiding something from everyone. He said every time I wanted to persuade those brothers who refused to awaken, I'd take them away. Then when they came back, they'd be like different people, either exceptionally brave or like they'd gone crazy. This absolutely couldn't be achieved by mere persuasion. I had no choice but to confess my special abilities to the communication squad leader. Fortunately, the communication squad leader ultimately understood my predicament and didn't press for more details, just patted my shoulder, saying he'd continue focusing on having unit brothers awaken while helping me keep the secret. And I also decided to properly examine my abilities, putting more energy into cooking, using food to provide everyone with more solid support. I opened my own system window to look carefully. Ability values, specialties, skills, and talents were all the same as before, only points had increased. Seems usually killing monsters or making dishes for everyone to eat would quietly increase points. I suddenly had a flash of inspiration. In normal games, points could be exchanged for items at shops. Maybe this system also had a similar point shop, so I silently recited point shop in my mind. Unexpectedly, the system really prompted loading successful. Relying only on current basic abilities would eventually hit a bottleneck. Having a shop meant I could keep getting stronger. I eagerly opened the shop interface to browse carefully. Most items that met my eyes were suitable for combat classes. Could I only use rye bread? I suppressed my disappointment and continued scrolling down, when suddenly my eyes lit up. The shop had ability value potions that increased strength, agility, and magic power, plus random skill books. These items all looked super useful, but the prices were also too expensive. Given my current points, purchasing now would really be too forced. Better to steadily accumulate points first. Once points were abundant, I could slowly research other items in the shop. After all, currently enhancing skills and specialties was more important. I re-examined my abilities. What I commonly used were Master Chef's Special Sauce and Chef's Eye, and lowest tier short blade proficiency let me naturally develop short blade combat posture. When practicing with the equipment squad ace last time, I progressed very quickly. I used short blades with unusual proficiency. Really curious how powerful higher tiers would be. Lowest tier fire manipulation ability was a pleasant surprise. Unlocked last time when I accidentally grabbed a scalding hot wok while cooking. Now putting my hand in fire, I could probably last 30 seconds uninjured. If I continued researching, maybe in the future I could directly use flames to cook or even fight. Would definitely become a great asset. Finally, the most important lowest tier cooking proficiency. Ever since confessing to the communication squad leader, this skill's numerical value kept accumulating and growing. Everyone often said my dishes were exceptionally delicious, and after eating they'd inexplicably develop a surge of strength. I'd already confirmed this skill could stack additional skill effects on awakened soldiers, while also boosting morale for non-awakened soldiers. If I could have all unit personnel stably receive this kind of buff, our overall combat power could definitely rise another level. impossible. Just as I was focused on thinking, a soldier hurriedly ran in, telling me to quickly go look at the armory, saying new monsters had appeared. They were on a completely different level from the previous lizards. I immediately followed the soldier rushing to the armory. The communications squad leader was asking what it meant that other monsters appeared. The guard soldier explained that though the appearance was similar to the lizards currently appearing, their strength and intimidation were vastly different, he said while handing over binoculars, pointing toward the distant mountain peak, telling us to see for ourselves. I quickly took the binoculars, concentrating carefully to observe. Initially in the field of vision, I only saw a few ordinary lizard monsters. Later discovered among the lizard group was one particularly conspicuous. Its shell was dark purple, several times larger than other lizards, its appearance much more fierce and menacing. After we put down the binoculars, our faces were full of shock. I took a deep breath, saying that monster's height probably exceeded 3 meters, from how the other lizards surrounded it. It was probably the monster's captain or leader. The communications squad leader said up until now they'd been attacking alone or in pairs, never seen such a large group. He frowned and asked the soldier if these monsters had migrated from elsewhere. That soldier nodded, saying he'd roughly counted over 20 monsters following that differently colored lizard. If they all rushed over together launching a general attack, the consequences would be unthinkable. Private Shu said somewhat uncertainly he could probably quickly subdue them, though it would consume more bullets, there shouldn't be any big problem. I also comforted everyone, saying we already knew their weak point was the armpit. As long as we coordinated well, we could handle it. Though I said this, my heart always felt something was off, a nameless sense of unease. I turned to ask that soldier when they discovered them. He said early this morning. I pressed further, asking if there were any particular movements. He said no, they were just wandering around the unit's perimeter. I suddenly had a flash of inspiration, thinking of a terrifying possibility. These monsters weren't wandering aimlessly at all. Must be that after the previous several attacks failed, they knew ordinary assaults wouldn't work. That's why they were wandering around the unit perimeter, observing defensive gaps. They were clearly waiting for the best opportunity to launch an unexpected deadly attack. Everyone's expressions darkened. Private Shu asked if monsters were really that smart. I asked him in return, did he know how cunning wolves were when hunting? Those monsters were definitely smarter than wolves. They understood teamwork and could observe enemy situations. The equipment squad ace nodded in agreement, saying these monsters must be far from simple to have survived this long. Also proposed they strike first while the monsters weren't ready, catch them off guard. I immediately objected. Taking the initiative would harm us more than help. The communications squad leader agreed that fighting outside was too risky, told the soldiers on watch to continue observing closely and reporting, and everyone could think of countermeasures together. Additionally, he needed to report to the company commander and hear the superior's opinion. I thought once news spread about a giant monster leader appearing, and monsters understanding team tactics, the confidence soldiers had finally built would surely waver again. At times like this, they had to feel secure, absolutely couldn't shake morale. So I immediately returned to the kitchen to prepare special dishes. The first was seasoned bean sprouts with reassurance special sauce. The refreshing taste could ease tense nerves and help everyone calmly face the crisis. After everyone ate, they rationally analyzed our advantageous position, more convinced that staying here was much safer than venturing out. Next was the second dish, with stabilizing special sauce, squid in sauce. Its savory taste paired with chewy texture could soothe inner anxiety, though everyone was scared and trembling at first. After fighting monsters continuously for so long, they'd become more and more skilled. Now, as long as they steadied their mindset, they could handle more complex situations. The final third dish was spicy stir-fried pork with trust special sauce. The spicy flavor could awaken fighting spirit and make everyone believe in each other and their families. Saying we weren't worried about family outside was a lie, but we had to always believe our families would also struggle to survive. Thanks to these 3 special dishes stabilizing morale, no incidents occurred in the unit. During this time, 20 brothers had awakened, and the unit's combat power steadily increased. After dinner, I came to the observation deck again, asking the soldier on watch about the situation. The soldier said they showed no abnormalities, still wandering around the unit's perimeter, but their numbers had more than doubled since first discovered, and kept increasing. I patted his shoulder in comfort, saying don't worry. Awakened marksmen in the unit had also increased. They could fire K2 rifles continuously, with extreme lethality, and hit targets precisely. Back at the food storage, while organizing inventory, I calculated that the unit's fresh ingredients were almost gone. But at the current awakening pace, by then awakeners would exceed half the total personnel. That way, even without my food buffs, the unit should operate stably. Suddenly, the entire warehouse plunged into complete darkness. The equipment squad soldiers had clearly said the generator could hold out for a while longer. A terrible thought surged to mind. Could the entire unit area have lost power if those monsters were deliberately taking action under cover of darkness? Damn it, we'd fallen into their trap. I immediately threw down the paper and pen in my hands and bolted outside, though we had awakened marksmen. The premise for them displaying their strength was clear visibility. If it was like now with no light, the marksman's precise shooting ability would be completely useless. Outside was already in chaos. The company commander was commanding the battle, telling awakened marksmen to immediately move to the rooftops with clear views. Remaining awakeners should focus on executing designated defensive tasks. Though panicked, soldiers still quickly took their positions. One person reported to the company commander that all forces were assembled. The company commander ordered them to immediately seal the entrance and reinforce defenses. Several soldiers immediately rushed to the armory's main entrance, quickly closing the gate. The communications squad leader ran to my side, panting that fortunately they still had flares flares left, could temporarily ensure marksmen could see, but wasn't sure how long the flares would last. Also worried shooting accuracy would be affected under such flickering bright light. I frowned, saying we needed to suppress them quickly. Once the flares ran out, the situation would become dangerous. I asked the communications squad leader if all the awakeners were arranged. The communications squad leader nodded, saying he'd arranged marksman groups at main shooting positions like rooftops and high ground. Mage-type awakeners were divided into attack and defense groups. Attack groups handled long-range output. Defense groups reinforced the front lines with magic barriers. Warrior-type awakeners were arranged along the walls, ready for close combat to intercept monsters that broke through. Seeing me pull out my short blade, the communications squad leader said I was the unit's logistical core and didn't need to fight. I shook my head, saying I'd use this blade to assist warriors defending along the walls. The communications squad leader quickly tried to dissuade me, telling me to stay in the rear coordinating or preparing dishes for support. I smiled, saying, "Brother, I was the first person in this unit to personally kill a monster. Though close combat experience wasn't extensive, handling a few monsters shouldn't be a problem." The communications squad leader said he couldn't do anything with me, just told me to be careful in everything. At this moment, soldiers on the rooftop shouted loudly, "They're coming! Everyone on alert!" The shout had barely fallen when everyone's hearts instantly leaped to their throats. The company commander quickly grabbed binoculars to look into the distance. After just one glance, cold sweat instantly appeared on his forehead. The number of attacking monsters far exceeded our previous estimates, a vast dark mass with no end in sight, charging toward the unit at extreme speed. Everyone anxiously urged the company commander to give orders. Private Shu roared, reminding everyone to quickly enter combat mode. The company commander took a deep breath and ordered the unit to begin firing. Bang, 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 rat-tat-tat. Gunfire instantly rang out. Dense bullets shot toward the monster horde. Monsters let out shrill howls. Many lizard monsters charging in front were hit and fell motionless, but the monsters behind showed no sign of retreating, still charging forward madly. Shooting sounds and battle cries intertwined together. I thought to myself, fortunately we still had flares. Otherwise this really would be disastrous. With our current forces and Awakener's combat power, we should easily kill half the monsters. Suddenly someone shouted loudly, "Their leader has appeared." It was that dark purple giant monster. The company commander immediately ordered marksmen to prioritize aiming at that monster leader. Concentrate all firepower and launch a fierce attack on it. Private Shu swiftly and skillfully changed magazines, holding back a fierce determination, vowing to take down this troublesome big guy. Seeing this, I quickly activated Chef's Eye, wanting to figure out its specific attributes. Information showed it was the leader of all lizard monsters, an extremely rare mutated individual with powerful command and combat abilities, and even a rare high-grade ingredient. No wonder ordinary shooting couldn't hit it at all. But that thing was ultimately a low-level creature without complex tactical thinking. No matter how large its body, as a command class it actually ran to the front lines leading the charge. This only made itself a target for all, becoming others' primary objective. But this lizard leader seemed completely unafraid. It roared again, its voice even louder than before. After hearing the roar, surrounding ordinary lizard monsters suddenly collapsed to the ground, their bodies violently convulsing. And when soldiers heard this roar, they covered their heads one after another, shouting that their heads hurt so much. Some said their bodies weren't obeying commands anymore. System prompts kept appearing, saying everyone displayed intense fear due to the lizard leader's roar. The lizard leader's war cry effect caused all lizard monsters' strength, agility, and stamina to temporarily increase slightly. Also gained lowest tier resistance to long-range attacks effect, while all our members thus gained lowest tier mental confusion, accuracy decrease, and low focus effects. These negative status effects quickly began showing their power. Not only were basic combat abilities affected, awakening skills also went wrong. The communication squad leader also said his magic flow became sluggish and he couldn't release skills. And marksman's accuracy was already affected by flares. Now with added negative effects, it was very hard to hit targets anymore. The company commander heard reports of bullets missing, and after glancing at the attacking monsters, instantly panicked. And those ordinary lizard monsters collapsed on the ground actually began twisting and mutating. Their bodies became larger than before, claws also sharper. Everyone was shocked speechless by the scene before them. Private Shu endured the discomfort, telling everyone to pull themselves together. Several mutated lizard monsters had already rushed to the walls. One misstep and the entire defense would be completely crushed by monsters. Told soldiers not to stand there dazed, pick up guns and keep shooting. Soldiers endured dizziness and raised their guns again. Bang, 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 gunfire rang out again. But accuracy greatly decreased, unable to inflict effective damage on monsters. Could this be the negative effect triggered by everyone fearing the leader? I made an immediate decision and shouted for all non-awakened soldiers to stop shooting immediately. Save all bullets for awakeners. Regular soldiers shooting couldn't even leave marks on mutated monsters, purely wasting ammunition. And magic-type brothers couldn't use their skills. To deal with the lizard leader, I had to confess my abilities to everyone. I asked the communications squad leader to gather all awakeners. Told everyone continuing long-range attacks was pointless now. We had to deal with these monsters at close range. Then I took out pre-prepared small pastries from my backpack and distributed them to everyone one by one. Everyone looked confused. This was the critical moment of battle. Why suddenly hand out pastries? I took a deep breath and told everyone a secret. Some might have already guessed. I could use my cooking to add exclusive buffs to awakeners. Everyone ate my dishes before awakening and should have felt the effects of increased strength and doubled courage, right? And I'd long anticipated monsters might raid in unexpected ways. So I prepared these pastries in advance, all specially made after researching each person's dietary preferences. After eating them, everyone could gain buffs best suited to their class abilities, effects even stronger than when awakening. Then we'd have great odds of defending our only stronghold. I walked beside the equipment squad ace and patted his shoulder, telling him to handle that lizard leader. After the equipment squad ace ate the pastry, his His eyes were firm as he said leave it to him, he'd definitely tear that thing to pieces. Soldiers' cries for help came from not far away, saying the first defensive line had already been breached by monsters. At this moment, awakened soldiers had finished eating the pastries. System-prompted dish effects greatly increased. Also prompted enemy monsters had all attributes greatly increased within 1 day due to mutation. Awakeners rushed to the front lines one after another. Monsters roared as they closed in, then swarmed forward all at once. I shouted and charged. Awakened soldiers immediately deployed their specialized skills in sync. Everyone was on high alert, and the company commander as leader had actually snuck away. The equipment squad ace charged at the very front. Leaping up, he smashed down hard with a fist at a mutated lizard. With a tremendous bang, that lizard was sent flying several meters, crashed heavily to the ground, struggled a few times, then stopped breathing. Other monsters seeing this immediately swarmed toward the ace, attacking madly. And all our awakened brothers didn't hold back either. All charged forward, fighting side by side with the ace, forming a solid battle line. Everyone fought with all their might, using awakened abilities to resist the mutated monster's fierce attacks. But the mutated lizards were harder to fight than usual. Suddenly, a lizard swung its claw and lunged at me. I quickly dodged sideways while raising my short blade to stab at its abdomen. But the blade seemed unable to penetrate at all, only leaving a shallow wound. I took out a pastry and quickly stuffed it in my mouth, thinking before becoming a master chef I definitely won't die. This mutated lizard monster was indeed formidable, but my strength wasn't to be underestimated either. System notification sounded. I'd consumed Brave Chocolate Cookie, effects greatly increased. All specialties rose 1 tier within 1 day. Lowest tier short blade proficiency became low tier short blade proficiency. Lowest tier fire manipulation ability also upgraded to low tier fire manipulation ability. I felt the power surging within my body. Now these ordinary lizards couldn't threaten me anymore. I looked up. The hardest to deal with was the lizard leader. That dark purple giant lizard was attacking with gaping maw. But the equipment squad had unlocked new specialties at this moment and wasn't falling behind. Simultaneously relying on mid-tier brave effects, all our members' lowest tier mental confusion effects completely failed. The ace shouted loudly for all comrades to attack together. Even if they died gloriously on the battlefield, they'd never retreat. I commanded everyone to drive the monsters toward the entrance, concentrate forces to form an encirclement. Soldiers and awakeners worked together with one heart, step by step driving monsters toward the entrance direction, even deliberately clearing a path for the equipment squad ace, letting him charge directly at the lizard leader, and the lizard leader also accelerated to charge head-on. Man and monster thus began a frontal confrontation. The equipment squad ace swung his fist, colliding with the lizard leader's claws. With a bang, both retreated several steps, actually evenly matched. The communication squad leader released electric shocks while exclaiming this pastry was really too amazing. After getting buffed, they were even stronger than monsters. Also said I was the unit's core figure. Without my dishes, they couldn't hold out at all. While using my short blade to cut down a monster, I said it was too early to feel relieved now. Before the ace suppressed the lizard leader, we had to do our best to trap other lizards. Couldn't let them go support their leader. I told the communication squad leader to focus on supporting from afar with electric shocks, preventing monsters from approaching the ace, then shouted for everyone to hang on a bit longer. Victory was close at hand. Warriors stood in the front row using shields to firmly block the offensive. Marksmen precisely aimed at monsters' eyes to shoot, temporarily making them lose vision. Mages coordinated releasing spell attacks. I gripped my short blade, weaving through the monster horde, relying on enhanced short blade proficiency to precisely stab monsters' weak points 1 blade at a time. I silently prayed in my heart for the ace to suppress the lizard leader. On the other side, the equipment squad ace was still fiercely battling the lizard leader. His fists repeatedly smashed heavily on the leader's body, but the leader's defense was extremely strong. It hadn't suffered fatal damage. Suddenly, the lizard leader became thoroughly enraged, vicious light blazing in its blood-red eyes. It suddenly swung its scale-covered long tail. Snap, a crisp sound. The long tail instantly coiled around the ace's neck, then forcefully flung him with all its might. The ace was viciously thrown away, crashed heavily to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Unable to move or resist for a moment, the lizard leader's face showed a triumphant, savage grin, as if certain it had already won. But the next second, circumstances suddenly changed. Several regular soldiers suddenly pounced from the side, all tightly grasping the lizard leader's limbs and torso. Some used all their strength to pry open its claws. Some bit hard into the gaps between its scales. The lizard leader screamed shrilly in pain. All its muscles bulged as it frantically twisted its body, flinging off the soldiers clinging to it one by one. But they ultimately managed to buy the ace a moment to catch his breath. At this moment, the equipment squad ace suddenly scrambled up from the ground. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, shouting to those soldiers, "Well done." Then the ace once again suddenly charged forward in a sprint, directly pinning down the lizard leader's body and pressing it to the ground. Quickly clenched his fist with tremendous force, smashing down hard on its body, fist after fist, beating the lizard leader until it vomited mouthfuls of black blood. But the ace had no intention of stopping. Instead, his attacks became increasingly fierce. Finally, even like last time, used his teeth to viciously tear off a chunk of flesh from its armpit, then spat it hard on the ground. The lizard leader let out one final desperate roar and completely stopped breathing. The battle finally ended. The scene was a complete mess. Monster corpses and blood everywhere on the ground. Everyone was exhausted and panting, but each person's face showed a victorious smile. I instructed the senior veterans to confirm casualties among unit brothers. The injured should be sent to the treatment room immediately. At this moment, system prompts appeared, saying we'd gained dominance over the ROK-17 district mountain range. Also prompted our group-level personnel, before establishing guild-level forces, were temporarily named Battalion 423. The system kept prompting that this was the first time in the entire ROK region forces had successfully occupied land. Achievement unlocked, Land Pioneer. Engage gave us a special gift. The morning sun slowly rose. Golden sunlight fell on the devastated position, dispelling the night's gloom. I smiled, saying this should mean we got first place in the occupation war, but never mind that now. Quickly treating the wounded and handling the battlefield was what mattered. Everyone immediately sprang into action. Some shouted to carry severe casualties to the treatment room, careful not to touch their wounds. Some comforted the wounded, saying they'd reach the place, telling them to hang in there, they'd receive treatment soon. Others shouted to quickly get water. The wounded here needed hydration. Some called out to healing-type awakeners, telling them to speed up. After battle ended, the busiest were awakeners with healing abilities. Fortunately, the unit had several former medics and chaplains who successfully awakened. Their healing skills and mental comfort abilities solved the unit's urgent needs. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and walked beside the communications squad leader, saying, "Brother, you worked hard." The communications squad leader waved his hand, saying, "The ace worked hardest. He charged at the front during battle and now he's out cold." He suddenly remembered something, saying the company commander fled from battle. Shouldn't have expected him to accomplish anything. Also said now only a few of them had to organize the armory, clean the battlefield, care for the wounded. Simply couldn't keep up. He then pulled me outside, saying, "Let's talk about system matters first." He pointed at the virtual interface before him, asking what it meant that we'd gained dominance over the mountains. Our unit was located at this mountain range's highest peak. Did that mean except for us the entire mountain range previously was those lizard monsters' territory? I suddenly understood. Explaining by game settings, we defeated the original natives, occupied this region's most representative location, so the system granted occupation certification. The communication squad leader nodded, saying this was definitely good news for us currently, then proposed they counterattack while lizards were severely weakened, annihilate them completely. I shook my head and calmly analyzed that yesterday's battle we had absolute geographical advantage, defending on preset lines, the defending side setting up lines and the attacking side that must break through had very different circumstances. Even with such advantageous defensive battle, we nearly had our lines breached and paid no small price. The communication squad leader wouldn't give up, saying our awakeners were also continuously increasing, now over 30 people. Combined with the powerful buffs I demonstrated yesterday, winning battles wasn't impossible. I said it's best not to place too much hope in those powerful buffs. The communication squad leader looked confused, asking why. I explained that to achieve that level of buffs required making dishes with good quality fresh ingredients and precisely matching each person's taste preferences. Each special dish took at least 4 to 7 hours to complete, time and labor intensive. The communications squad leader's eyes widened, unable to believe it was so complex. I continued saying the pastries everyone ate yesterday were stock I'd prepared many days in advance, fearing sudden monster attacks. Impossible to make them again. First, we don't have that many high-quality ingredients. Second, awakener numbers have increased. However, I could still help everyone make dishes providing moderate buffs. Improving basic combat power was no problem. The communication squad leader was somewhat disappointed, saying seems he'd thought too simply. Then we won't rush to counterattack. Take time thinking of strategies. He patted my shoulder, asking if I'd thought about what special gift to choose. I called up the system interface. 7 special gift options listed there, each name sounding strange, completely unable to guess their uses. I said helplessly that after looking for ages I had no clue. The communication squad leader also said these options made him dizzy. Better let me choose. Anyway, there was no intel now. Choosing anything was like lottery drawing. Having me, the lucky general, choose made him feel more at ease. Other brothers hearing I chose would definitely have no objections. After all, yesterday without my special dish buffs, we couldn't have won that battle at all. And the company commander was currently nowhere to be found. Couldn't ask his opinion either. I took a deep breath and decided to choose number 2 Mobile Fortress Flying Battle Car. I explained that, at least from the name its use could be inferred, should be some kind of transportation or combat vehicle. Whether relocating positions or going out to find supplies, it could come in handy. Our food would soon run out. Before long, we'd definitely have to leave the unit to find supplies. By then, this flying battle car might play a big role. The communications squad leader nodded, telling me to quickly press to confirm. I reached out and lightly tapped the number 2 option on the virtual interface. System displayed special gift Mobile Fortress Flying Battle Car selected. Immediately granted me authority to summon the flying battle car. My hands seemed to have a strange feeling, as if I really could summon something. Then I concentrated my thoughts trying to summon. The next second, tremendous roaring came from above, shaking even the ground slightly. We both quickly looked up, faces full of anticipation, waiting for the summoning result. But the system immediately prompted insufficient space for summoning, unable to complete summoning. The communications squad leader's eyes widened, muttering just how big was that thing, then pulled me running toward the training ground. Other soldiers also said that place's open terrain should work, so we hurried over to try. However, I tried countless times until the sun set, and the system still prompted insufficient space for summoning, unable to complete summoning. Finally, we could only return to the restroom, while sitting on the bed resting. I called up my attribute interface. Skills were still Chef's Eye and Master Chef's Special Sauce, but already upgraded to level 9. Points also accumulated to 1032. Those who ate my dishes and performed excellently in battle due to buffs, their battle achievements would also convert to my experience points. This was a pleasant surprise. Looking at it this way, my growth was very smooth, and our combat power kept increasing. Just as I was thinking about the next plan, suddenly knocking sounded. A familiar figure pushed open the door. It was the company commander who'd been missing all day. I quickly stood up and saluted him. Reported I was in Internal Affairs Room 3 organizing post-battle supplies and attribute panels. The company commander waved his hand, tone carrying deliberate warmth, saying saying I'd worked hard. Also praised me as a remarkable mess hall soldier. I secretly scoffed inwardly, declining his praise. At critical moments throwing everything to soldiers while hiding himself. He was just a coward. The company commander completely didn't notice my thoughts and continued on his own, saying fortunately I and the communications squad leader trained awakeners well and stabilized the unit. Also said to be safe he went to confirm the communications network with superiors. Unfortunately still no good news to this day. I couldn't help asking if there was news about those 2 driver soldiers who went to find the superior unit. The company commander said it had already been 10 days. He felt they wouldn't return. I silently complained inwardly. Wasn't it because he'd insisted on his own way back then, sending them out for aid with monsters rampant? Outside was full of monsters in piles. How could they possibly escape safely? The company commander changed the subject, asking if I wasn't opening the mess hall today so everyone had to make do with combat rations. I nodded, saying that was the plan. Ingredients were scarce now, and everyone needed rest after battle. Though combat rations were crude, they could save supplies and time. The company commander frowned, tone tinged with dissatisfaction, asking couldn't we make something to eat ourselves? My heart jumped, inwardly speechless. Clearly injured brothers hurt too much to eat properly, yet he only thought of eating something hot himself. I suppressed my displeasure and explained we currently needed to conserve ingredients. Only us cooking for ourselves would earn other brothers' contempt. The company commander looked disdainful, saying he was an officer after all. Damn, I couldn't defy him either. After all, he was the only remaining officer in the unit, no matter how unreliable, couldn't openly contradict him. And if other military forces still existed outside, someday we'd have to contact them. By then, as the current highest-ranking officer, he'd be a very important liaison. Since he didn't understand hints, I had to directly state remaining fresh ingredients were for enhancing Awakener's attributes. After hearing this, the company commander impatiently waved his hand, saying he wouldn't eat then. Since the situation was like this, he wouldn't fuss with me. But I shouldn't only care for Awakeners. All soldiers should be treated equally. I stared blankly at his departing back. Anger instantly surged from the depths of my heart. A loud bang came. The door was slammed shut forcefully. I opened my mouth but could only heave a heavy sigh in the end, then dragged my exhausted body back to sit on the bed. Later I went to the treatment room to visit my fellow countryman, the radar squad leader. Told him since the mountains were occupied by us, monster attack frequency had greatly decreased. Occasionally monsters that trespassed we could easily suppress and use as live training materials for new recruits awakening. My fellow countryman smiled gratefully after hearing me speak. I couldn't help asking about his leg. Was it really impossible to fully recover? My fellow countryman's tone carried a hint of acceptance, saying though walking would be a bit tiring and painful, it didn't affect combat and duty. I'd heard from healers and chaplains that if he'd been treated promptly upon injury, his leg would be fine. So I felt very uncomfortable inside, wishing he'd blame me instead. I was the one who stopped everyone from rescuing him back then, made him complete the monster-killing awakening action alone, thus delaying treatment timing. But my fellow countryman said this wasn't my fault. Don't make that expression. Also patted my shoulders, saying if we hadn't tried to awaken, by now, everyone would probably have been eaten by monsters. This was an injury sustained in battle no matter what. An honorable medal, not my responsibility. And thanks to me, everyone could persist until now and defend this position. Hearing his comfort, I couldn't help my eyes reddening, nearly moved to tears. In such difficult circumstances, having such fellow countrymen supporting each other was truly wonderful. My fellow countryman smiled, saying he had something to show me. Walking out to the rooftop terrace, he said his class was astronomer. I asked what his specific skill was. He scratched his head, explaining it was observing celestial movements to glimpse heavenly secrets and divine journey outcomes. I pressed, asking if he could predict the future. He nodded, saying he could predict dangers and such in advance. I excitedly said he was worthy of being from the radar squad. This skill of his could completely help us formulate strategies in actual combat. My fellow countryman nodded. Then his expression became serious. Said through celestial observation he learned 2 things. My heart tightened as I quickly asked what things. He said the first was tomorrow guests would visit the unit. I looked shocked. In this remote wilderness, besides us and monsters, how could there be other people? He didn't explain further, just looked at me and mentioned the second thing. Said having me show weakness tomorrow would be more prudent. I quickly pressed, asking what this meant. He just smiled. After all, even he himself didn't clearly understand the specific meaning. Early the next morning, the soldier at the watchtower suddenly shouted loudly, saying a group of people suddenly appeared, about 20+ people. The soldier pointed down the mountain, saying they were climbing up the mountain. Could also faintly hear cheers coming from them. By their appearance, the arrivals were just a group of ordinary civilian common folk. The soldier reported again that based on their current travel speed and position, they'd probably reach unit grounds within an hour. The communications squad leader frowned, saying they actually ignored the military restricted area signs and climbed up the mountain. Also wondered where these people had escaped from, surprisingly not attacked by monsters along the way. At times like this, the company commander was nowhere to be seen again. He turned his head, asking me anxiously, "What should we do now?" I believe soldiers couldn't stand by and watch people die. We should take them in. In this apocalypse, one more person meant one more source of strength. The communication squad leader nodded, saying he'd arrange personnel for reception. I thought to myself, my fellow countryman's prediction came true. The guests must refer to these people. The civilians entered the camp one after another, each looking uneasy. One soldier was responsible for explaining and guiding them to soothe emotions. One soldier registered everyone's information for easier management. Another soldier handed out drinking water, maintaining basic needs in an orderly fashion. The communication squad leader told me there were 25 25 people total, 3 children, 2 elderly, men and women of all ages. He planned to house the civilians on the 3rd floor, increase night shift personnel to strengthen vigilance and prevent accidents. I nodded, saying, let's do that. At this moment, the company commander appeared, obviously coming to display an officer's authority in front of the civilians. His voice boomed as he said he was the company commander currently commanding this unit. Everyone could rest assured. As long as they followed soldiers' instructions and obeyed camp rules, the unit would ensure everyone's safety and basic living. Also said smugly with him here there was nothing to fear. The unit had already defended this mountain range. Monsters didn't dare easily attack. However, everyone completely ignored his words and kept asking questions noisily. The company commander, seeing they were very difficult to handle, turned and called us over to deal with them. The company commander pointed at me and the communications squad leader, introducing us, saying we were this unit's highest-ranking soldiers with outstanding abilities. When he wasn't around, if everyone had any problems, they could find either of us. The company commander turned, asking the communications squad leader if the living quarters had space for them to stay. The communications squad leader answered that personnel were already arranged to clean the 3rd floor. The company commander nodded, saying the communications squad leader would be responsible for guiding and housing everyone. Told him to be careful not to make mistakes. Then the company commander ordered me to go prepare meals. After civilians were settled in the living quarters they could eat, I could only agree reluctantly. 99 soldiers plus 25 surviving civilians. Fresh ingredients were already scarce. How could I possibly make it ready immediately? He clearly just wanted to show off his officer's authority in front of everyone, completely not considering the actual situation. The civilians praised one after another, saying officers were indeed different, feeling fortunate they were safe now. The communications squad leader came beside me, saying quietly that company commander's smile was really annoying. I sighed, saying he was an officer after all. No matter what, his words still carried more weight than soldiers. Being able to make civilians feel secure and cooperative was also a good thing. The communications squad leader nodded. Though the company commander couldn't do things and was greedy, at least he could talk and comfort people. I told him to complain later. First handle registration and housing matters. Now I had to hurry to the dining hall to prepare food. After speaking, I gathered a few soldiers to help and headed toward the kitchen. The communications squad leader led the civilians to the 3rd floor of the living quarters. After wandering displaced for many days, having a place that sheltered from wind and rain, far from monster threats, was already tremendous luck for them. But some weren't satisfied. A bald old man frowned, complaining that staying on high floors was inconvenient. The ace quickly stepped forward to comfort him, explaining monsters generally only broke in from the 1st floor, so the 3rd floor was the safest level. Also said if the old man found going up and down stairs inconvenient, he could call soldiers for help anytime. They'd do their best to care for him. On another side, a young woman excitedly shouted she could finally take a shower. The soldier guiding them explained there was no hot water supply here. Please everyone understand. After settling everyone, soldiers then guided them to the dining hall for meals. Civilians gathered around dining tables, eating steaming hot food in big mouthfuls. Many people wolfed down food, saying they'd finally eaten a proper meal. Though suddenly having 25 more people to care for in various unexpected situations made me somewhat irritated and distracted. Seeing everyone eating my cooking with relish, satisfied smiles on their faces, my mood also improved. Speaking of which, I was really worried about the ingredient problem now. The unit's regular food supplies had almost completely run out. At the current consumption rate, emergency rations and combat rations would also quickly be exhausted. What would we do then? While thinking, a blond man walked beside me, smiled saying he was so grateful, praised that my cooking was really delicious, then suddenly asked what my occupation was, given how good my culinary skills were. My heart sank. I almost blurted out that my occupation was chef. After all, that's what the Awakener window displayed. But I immediately realized and changed my answer, saying before enlisting I was a college student. The blond man nodded and turned to leave with his underlings. Strange. Why would he randomly ask a soldier's occupation? Since monsters appeared, occupation meant the special occupation displayed on the window only Awakeners could see. Hearing this question, others might instinctively answer their awakened occupation, right? Could my fellow countryman's words about showing weakness first mean I should hide my special abilities in front of civilians? After eating his fill, the communication squad leader returned to the living quarters to rest when he suddenly remembered he forgot to report to the company commander. So he quickly walked out of the building and heard several soldiers chatting. Someone complained that fighting monsters was one thing, but now they also had to watch survivors' expressions and cater to them. Really didn't know how things had deteriorated to this point. A soldier immediately agreed, saying since these people came, things kept increasing, hadn't gotten proper rest. Also said it was all the company commander's fault for being unreasonable, acting superior because he's an officer, casually agreeing to civilians' demands. Another soldier chimed in, saying actually felt the hot-tempered communications squad leader was more reliable. The communications squad leader, hearing this, walked out from beside the wall, joining their complaint session. Complained the company commander always hid alone to avoid danger when everyone was really gambling their lives fighting, but facing survivors he excitedly ran out to steal credit and show off. Someone agreed but helplessly said the company commander was an officer. Everyone couldn't do anything about him. After hearing everyone's complaints, the communications squad leader sighed helplessly. On the way to the company commander's office, he kept pondering this matter. Seems everyone thought similarly. Who would follow a commander who hid during battles? Continuing like this would sooner or later affect soldiers' morale and unit cohesion. Had to take measures quickly. That night, the communication squad leader quietly gathered all soldiers without duty assignments for a secret meeting meeting on the rooftop. He lowered his voice apologizing for gathering everyone so late, then said he really couldn't ignore the current situation. Seeing everyone holding grievances in their hearts yet unable to do anything, he felt bad. So when he reported work earlier, he argued with the company commander. Soldiers asked in surprise what they discussed. The communications squad leader said he requested the commander think more from soldier standpoint, don't just care about showing off himself. Also, he suggested the company commander not act arbitrarily. Before making any decisions, at least discuss with us who are responsible for execution. However, the company commander simply couldn't communicate properly. The company commander said whether to reference our opinions was his freedom. Also said we were just soldiers and couldn't force him to do anything. A soldier shouted angrily that person completely didn't think from our standpoint. He fundamentally didn't plan to fight alongside us either. I looked at everyone's indignant appearance, only then discovering everyone had accumulated so much dissatisfaction. The communication squad leader's tone became serious, saying this problem concerned our survival and absolutely couldn't be taken lightly. That's why he gathered everyone together to discuss this matter. His first proposal he wanted to implement was to deal with the company commander. Rather than being constantly dragged down by the company commander, better to solve this troublemaker early. I quickly stepped forward, pulling the communication squad leader back, saying if this got out, it would be the grave crime of insubordination. The communication squad leader told me to think carefully. Did I want to be led around by that person until everyone was killed by him? I quickly explained, saying I didn't mean that, but the company commander was ultimately an officer, the only military officer in the unit. Even if he gave strange orders, privately discussing and pretending to comply was enough. No need to be this extreme. The communication squad leader asked in return, did I think this kind of thing would only happen once? Also said later there might be more survivors joining. The group scale would be much larger than now. If every time the company commander appeared as representative, only more and more people would think he was the real representative. Our say would become smaller and smaller. Someday we'd have no way to do things our own way. He turned, looking at everyone, asking if everyone knew he had no real ability. A soldier nodded. Just thinking about being commanded by the company commander forever felt terrible. Several previous missions almost had big problems because of his wrong decisions. Others said before staying in the same office with him, he did nothing but give orders except practical work. The equipment squad ace actually agreed with my viewpoint, saying the outside world might still have complete military systems, later might have to return to order. In modern warfare, insubordination carried the death penalty. He felt this idea was too dangerous. The communication squad leader said mine and the ace's thoughts everyone understood, but precisely because of this, we needed to deal with the company commander more. The equipment squad ace looked confused, asking what this meant. The communication squad leader explained that without the only officer company commander, the two of us as highest ranking squad leaders would become the highest positions. Even ordinary soldiers, as long as they could convince everyone, could play the commander role when officers weren't present. Everyone froze, no one spoke. The communication squad leader suddenly put his hand on my shoulder, said if we later encountered outside military forces, having me command wouldn't be a problem either, as long as dealing with the company commander was done secretly without discovery. But I was just a mess hall soldier. How could I possibly be a commander? The communication squad leader countered that without me in the past, everyone would have died long ago. This was too absurd. How would everyone agree to let a mess hall soldier be the boss? A soldier said I always prioritized them. Without my buffs, they simply couldn't win battles. Another soldier agreed, saying though I was a mess hall soldier, I had responsibility and ability, supported me as commander. Others also responded one after another, saying they also supported. I looked at everyone's determined eyes, feeling both helpless and moved. The communications squad leader's tone was unquestionable, telling me to obediently accept. This was everyone's decision and currently the best choice for the unit. System prompts suddenly appeared. Displayed attack squad's minimum unit team successfully formed. Obtained team leader recognized by over half of groups with 30 plus people. Team established. Team? Awakeners looked at the holographic interface before them, eyes widening. The system continued prompting that team scale exceeded temporary combined small groups, was the first stage of forming official organizations, would display different levels of cohesion. This was the second team in the entire ROK region. The first team in this ROK 17 region. Achievement unlocked. Brothers in Arms given second place reward group skill token. My attribute interface also updated. Affiliated with Team 423, position was team leader. My previous resistance and helplessness were gradually replaced by a nameless sense of responsibility. Since everyone trusted me so much, I couldn't disappoint these expectations. After thinking for a moment, I opened my eyes and straightened my back. Since I was team leader, my first proposal was to oppose eliminating the company commander. The communications squad leader said without eliminating him, our days would be hopeless. Other soldiers also panicked, saying he was just a burden that only dragged them down. I raised my hand, signaling everyone to be quiet, told them to calm down and hear me out. Once we killed for quick gain, even if the target was a burden, we'd lose our humanity and become like walking corpses. I hoped our unit brothers, no matter how difficult the circumstances, could maintain the bottom line of being human. To prevent everyone from losing humanity, I had one requirement. Please everyone promise me, unless first attacked, absolutely cannot kill people. Instantly the scene fell into silence. After a long while, everyone responded in unison they would follow my orders. Someone asked how to handle the company commander, saying he'd definitely make things difficult everywhere. I said though he was currently a troublesome figure, directly eliminating him was a bit wasteful, so just make him useful. Everyone looked at each other but were willing to follow my command. After discussing matters, soldiers returned to the living quarters to rest, and at a shadowy spot on the third floor, someone was secretly observing us. The crew cut man reported to Blonde Boss that soldiers had returned. Exclaimed soldiers now lived really well, going for walks together late at night. Blonde's lips curved into a cold smile, considering soldiers just a bunch of kids around 20, then asked his underlings if they'd confirmed what he instructed. Number 3 quickly responded it was confirmed, said he'd naturally probed several soldiers but hadn't heard answers like awakeners would give. Number 2 also said they were all just ordinary soldiers, mentioned only pre-enlistment jobs. And after observing a bit, he found soldiers normally used guns to kill monsters. No one displayed special abilities. Blonde nodded satisfactorily. Said then proceed according to the original plan. Number 4 asked when to begin action. Blonde's eyes were sinister, saying to be safe, observe a few more days. The underlings acknowledged the order one after another. Early the next morning, I came to the dining hall, after preparing for meal service. I opened the system interface. Holding the metal tag engraved with Team Leader, I felt somewhat emotional. Never expected my first equipment would be dog tags, immediately followed by explanation that the leader could choose objects symbolizing the group as tokens for affiliated members to wear. Would give ability value extra rewards based on group scale. Reward degree adjusted according to position within the group. Was ability value rewards for all group members. Seems the effect was very powerful. I couldn't help recalling yesterday. I was still somewhat unconfident whether I could really be team leader. The communications squad leader analyzed existing high-ranking soldiers. He himself was too hot-tempered and impulsive. The radar squad leader was still recovering from injury. The ace could use berserker strength to suppress everyone but was too gentle by nature, unsuited to be commander. Private Shu, though brave and bold, lacked slightly in overall control, so team leader position ultimately had to be mine. Memory ended. The soldier responsible for liaison came and reporting matters were handled. Now all soldiers wouldn't mention awakening matters. When asked about occupation, would only mention pre-enlistment identities. When survivors appeared too suddenly, only temporarily notified awakeners. Now finally thorough. My fellow countryman's prediction was accurate, so we'd conceal having awakeners as much as possible to avoid complications. I added that, however, we couldn't slow down the unit's awakener progress because of this. The soldier responded, no problem. The task of suppressing monsters was mainly handled by marksman awakeners. On the surface, they weren't different from regular gun-carrying soldiers, wouldn't arouse suspicion. After speaking, the soldier changed subjects, saying a woman kept demanding to talk with high-level personnel, looked very anxious. She seemed to be the survivors' leader, should send me the team leader to talk showing respect. But if the company commander heard we bypassed him, he'd come make trouble again. I interrupted him, tone firm saying, leave the company commander to me to handle. Then arranged for him to have survivors select several representatives. 1 week later, talk in the second-floor restroom of the living quarters. Additionally, reminded soldiers again, when contacting civilians, absolutely couldn't reveal any true situation of the unit. The soldier saluted, saying he'd convey it immediately. After the soldier left, I picked up the freshly made noodles. It was time to rectify the long unhandled military hierarchy matters. And that troublesome company commander. I opened the hidden compartment in the basement and walked in. One soldier wondered why the team leader went below the mess hall. Another explained the dining hall had a basement with boilers and generators inside, providing hot water and electricity. The basement was also large, normally used to store unit supplies, basically a warehouse. Also added that according to veterans, the basement now had other uses. The basement indeed had other uses, namely as a prison cell. Here was hidden and quiet, just right for holding people. I walked to the door at the very back, took out the key and opened the door, then walked in. The company commander, hearing movement, immediately stood up. After seeing clearly it was me, he begged me to let him out. I shook my head, saying not now. After all, we'd just captured him and hadn't tamed him yet. Last night we implemented the company commander capture plan, taking advantage of deep night. We rushed into a single dormitory. The company commander, using his computer, instinctively turned around. The communication squad leader activated his awakening skill. A current flashed, electrocuting him unconscious. Then several of us packaged him up and locked him in the basement. The whole process didn't alarm anyone. The company commander still excitedly begged me, saying if he'd done anything before that hurt soldiers' hearts, he admitted his mistakes and apologized. Whether spilling coffee causing radar equipment failure, pushing all bad things for soldiers to take blame, or venting on soldiers when he made mistakes and slacking off, he apologized for everything. I thought to myself, seems he'd thought carefully about why he ended up in this situation. He said I had good relationships with unit brothers. Could I help plead for him? I responded, saying I tried to persuade everyone, but currently too many brothers opposed. He obviously hadn't realized how excessive his previous behavior was. After all, soldiers who resented him were more than he imagined. Hearing this, the company commander directly collapsed onto the bed. This situation was indeed very desperate. After all, there were precedents of officers being killed by unit brothers during wartime. I brought the food tray over, telling him not to worry too much. I'd continue persuading everyone. Also said, knowing he liked eating noodles, specifically made chicken pasta, told him to try it. The company commander's eyes lit up. After taking the tray, he thanked me repeatedly. He couldn't wait to pick up the fork and roll up noodles, put them in his mouth, kept saying delicious, said he'd finally come back to life. I smiled slightly. The plan officially began. First step, let him fully enjoy happiness-filled delicious food before implementing the company commander capture plan. I'd informed the communication squad leader, saying I'd first use monster corpses to make dishes for the company commander to eat, though man-eating monsters becoming food felt somewhat uncomfortable. At this stage, this was the best substitute ingredient. So first, let the unknowing company commander taste test. First, observe how much stats long-term consumption of lizard meat could increase for the company commander after awakening. Second, test what effects my dishes could feed back to me after consumption and awakening. Because when making dishes at that time, the system prompted obtaining title Pioneer, was a title given to those advancing from their specialty field into new territories. Skills and specialty effects related to occupation would increase 100%. And I'd already tasted lizard meat myself. Non-toxic and harmless, confirmed humans could consume it. So what I made for the company commander was lizard pink sauce pasta filled with top-tier happiness. Using this dish could absolutely conquer the company commander. Memory ended. The company commander, while eating pasta, exclaimed he hadn't eaten delicious food in too long. His mood was super good. I smiled, saying as long as he was happy. He quickly ate all the pasta on the tray clean. I tidied up the dishes dishes, turned around to continue cooking. From now on, every meal I'd provide him high-quality food, making his tongue and brain completely addicted to my cooking. After 4 days, I implemented the second step of the plan. When the company commander saw what I handed over was hard-to-swallow dry rations, he immediately panicked. But I let him rage and turned to leave. This went on for 2 days, when he almost couldn't take it anymore. I launched the third step of the plan, continued bringing dry rations to the basement, and had soldiers capture a lizard used for awakening to await my instructions. The company commander was now complaining loudly in the basement, griping the food was too terrible. After seeing me appear, commanded me as an officer to quickly bring proper dishes. My tone was calm, saying if he really wanted delicious food, this kind of attitude wouldn't work. He was so angry his face flushed, still trying to use his position to suppress me. I turned around indifferently, saying seems we couldn't communicate, told him to think carefully. These days, after the happiness he felt through delicious food disappeared, the sense of emptiness must be especially strong. Sure enough, the next second he thumped to his knees on the ground. His voice carried pleading, begged me to cook for him. He'd do anything. Everything was within my control. I took the opportunity, saying I could continue making delicious food for him, but there was one condition. After speaking, I instructed soldiers outside to throw a monster with just one breath left into the basement. Calculating in my mind, from trends of occupations awakeners obtained, the company commander might be a lottery ticket. The company commander looked at the struggling monster on the ground, his face instantly turning pale, and my condition was having him personally kill that monster. The company commander hesitated a moment but finally gritted his teeth, saying he understood. He tremblingly took the knife I handed over, closed his eyes and stabbed down at the monster. System prompt appeared. Congratulations, company commander awakened. Displayed his occupation was novice commander, specialty was lowest tier command ability. Soldiers under his command had ability values increased by 10%. Immediately the system also prompted my ability values also increased by 10%. Really won the lottery. Methods of ability value increase roughly divided into 2 types, adding fixed numbers and adding percentages. If adding fixed values, the lower the recipient's base abilities, the more obvious the effect. Conversely, adding percentages, the higher individual base ability values, the more significant the effect. So the higher brother's ability values, the more effective the company commander's specialty. Of course, this core information I wouldn't tell him. After casually placating him with a few words, I turned back to the kitchen. System prompt appeared. Achievement. Unlocked inescapable deliciousness. Successfully completely dominated person through cooking. Was one of the highest achievements a chef could attain. The reward was top-grade ingredient Fang Dragon's Heart. And I also leveled up, gained massive experience, reached level 10. All specialties also changed from lowest tier to low tier. When my specialty was lowest tier, I was already considered an expert in that field. If specialty rose another level, just how strong would it become? New system prompt appeared. Unlocked skill combat rations. Explanation could manufacture preservable wartime food. Long shelf life, small volume, provided high calories, suitable as field rations. I picked up a piece of freshly made compressed rations. Ate a few bites, tasted pretty good. In the future, when I couldn't help soldiers prepare 3 meals, this would be the best choice. Looks like the company commander had quite a few uses after all. However, exactly 1 week had passed. Time to meet with the survivors. I instructed soldiers to invite the communications squad leader and equipment squad ace. Together we came to the second floor of the living quarters. I appointed the communications squad leader as primary person in charge. After all, he had the highest education among us and was also eloquent. The communications squad leader rolled his eyes, saying I'd thrown him a hot potato. I smiled, responding that though I agreed to be team leader, I definitely didn't plan to personally handle everything. The communications squad leader helplessly accepted the order, shouted to others to be alert and not let their guard down. Soon we arrived at the living quarters restroom. Survivor representatives were already waiting inside. The communications squad leader politely greeted them to sit. After sitting, I was secretly vigilant in my heart. Maybe among them someone would pose danger to us. According to my fellow countrymen, the radar squad leader's prophecy, we had to hide our strength from them. Since that was the case, the strategy we'd adopt in this dialogue was not reveal any core intel of our military, while working hard to find out detailed information about them. The leading woman, seeing the communications squad leader presiding over the meeting, immediately asked alertly why the company commander didn't appear. The communications squad leader calmly explained that we who were responsible for frontline combat and affairs could more directly respond to everyone's questions, and important matters in the meeting would all be truthfully conveyed to the company commander. The woman nodded, expressing understanding, didn't pursue this matter further, but beside her, the blonde said communicating with a bunch of ordinary soldiers wouldn't be clear. Told us to just go call the company commander over. The communications squad leader responded neither humbly nor arrogantly. Everyone present were the most senior soldiers doing frontline work in each department, completely capable of answering everyone's questions. Whatever you want to know, feel free to ask. The blonde man frowned, tone unfriendly, asking why drag it out a week before holding the meeting. Wasn't this deliberately slighting survivors? The communications squad leader patiently explained. Considered everyone was exhausted from long escape, so deliberately left time to rest, while also giving them enough time to think about matters to discuss in the meeting. And our unit recently was also very busy due to monster attacks, supply organization, and other affairs. The blonde man immediately seized on this, pressing questions relentlessly. The leading woman suddenly shouted loudly. The blonde shuddered all over and froze. The other survivors beside them also dared not make a sound. The woman turned her head, showing us an apologetic smile. I secretly praised in my heart. Seems she had high prestige among these survivors. The woman opened her mouth, apologizing that the blonde had a somewhat hot personality but no ill intent. The communications squad leader took the opportunity to smooth things over, saying we indeed also had inconsiderate aspects, also no ill intent. Then advanced the meeting start, having the woman first explain what happened and how survivors came to the unit. After all, in such chaotic circumstances, always had to first understand each other's situations. The woman nodded and began recounting their experiences, saying before this erupted she was a tailor shop owner. I thought to myself, a female tailor as leader. Must be an awakener. The female tailor continued, saying one day monsters suddenly appeared without warning. Almost simultaneously, communications tools like internet, TV, and phones all lost signal. The residential area suffered comprehensive monster attacks, and even more terrifying was those people attacked by those monsters would become zombies without reason who only attacked living people. Wait, zombies? What did this mean? The soldiers present also erupted, discussing noisily. The communications squad leader quietly told me the situation was completely different from our side. I secretly guessed, could different regions have different monster types appearing? Seeing this, the female tailor was confused, not understanding why we were so surprised. The communications squad leader quickly waved his hands, lying that we normally didn't use the word zombie, just a bit unaccustomed. Survivors said no matter how you look they're zombies, asked what we called them otherwise. The communications squad leader was momentarily speechless, not knowing how to answer. A soldier had a flash of inspiration, saying we called them walkers. I secretly complained inwardly. What was this brother suddenly talking about? However, the crew cut man immediately laughed, said so soldiers also loved watching that zombie show. The female tailor said she'd also watched that show. Since that's the case, let's call them walkers from now on. This actually worked, nearly exposed ourselves. The female tailor continued, saying, to avoid those monsters and walkers, they could only struggle to run away. Along the way, other survivors continuously joined, thus forming their current team scale. Then, while wandering everywhere searching for safe refuge, heard from a survivor that there was a unit on the nearby mountain. It was the bald old man present today who told everyone this news. That's why they decided to come this way. Hearing this, the equipment squad ace curiously asked how Grandpa knew the unit's location. The bald old man explained a friend who worked construction together told him, but they only knew the unit was on this mountain range, didn't know the specific location. The female tailor added that anyway, if they didn't find it, there'd be no loss. Someone suggested coming to try their luck. I raised my hand asking, they had no proper weapons on them. How could they break through Walker's encirclement and safely arrive here? The female tailor seemed to have anticipated we'd ask this, her expression calm as she stated she'd awakened superpowers. The restroom fell into complete silence. I thought to myself, indeed so. The female tailor went on to explain, among 25 survivors, only she alone awakened. But precisely this ability allowed everyone to survive. Speaking, the female tailor stood up, said she'd directly demonstrate her ability to convince us. All of us stared at her closely, curious what this superpower that protected everyone looked like. She pulled out 2 scissors from her body, explained these were tailoring scissors she used to alter fabric when running her suit shop, so they were larger and sharper than ordinary scissors. I secretly guessed her previous work experience, awakened abilities related to tailoring. I saw the female tailor grip the scissors tightly with both hands, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The instant she opened her eyes, she activated her skill and forcefully cut down at the wooden table before her. A crisp snip accompanied by the sound of wood breaking. An entire thick wooden table was actually cut straight through with her scissors. Split from the middle, the cut impossibly smooth. Putting down the scissors, the female tailor said she could at least do this much. This scene was truly familiar to me. Then the female tailor recalled the moment of awakening, eyes carrying a hint of lingering fear. She said at that time she was working normally at the suit shop. A group of walkers suddenly attacked the shop. In that critical situation, she grabbed scissors nearby to resist. While desperately resisting, she happened to stab the scissors into one of their heads. Right after that, a holographic interface suddenly appeared before her, said she'd awakened as Tailor Master and gained some abilities. I muttered in my heart, she awakened by stabbing into a zombie's head? Could different attack targets mean humans needed to meet different conditions to awaken? Carrying this doubt, I couldn't help pressing, why was she the only one who awakened? Had other people never fought walkers? The female tailor shook her head, tone confused, saying along the way everyone encountered many dangers, all had experiences fighting walkers or monsters. Some people even killed walkers, but didn't know what special conditions needed to be met to truly awaken. In the end, only she alone succeeded. This was too different from our unit situation. Killing zombies actually still couldn't awaken. Could such things exist? Did they really only have one awakener? Or were they deliberately concealing something? The communications squad leader pretended to have just learned about awakening. The female tailor felt this important information should be shared with us. The communications squad leader quickly thanked her and said if there was anything the unit could help with in the future, they'd be happy to assist. I thought to myself, someone as honest as the female tailor who willingly shares key information up front probably had no ill intentions. That blonde who kept snooping around with an arrogant attitude, he was the most suspicious. So this absolutely couldn't be taken lightly. Had to prepare a trap in advance. As long as those hidden troublemakers slipped up, they could be immediately controlled. I made an excuse saying I had something something to attend to and left the restroom first. Back in the kitchen, I made some snacks, then sat outside to begin implementing the trap plan. After all the dangerous situations ahead we had no way to predict, so better resolve immediate difficulties first. Just then, the sisters who helped with dishes arrived. I stood up and smiled, telling them they'd worked hard. The older sister quickly spoke up, her tone sincere, saying everyone took turns coming to help. Living under someone else's roof, they should do something. I took the opportunity to bring out the prepared snacks, telling them they must eat before going back. The younger sister's eyes lit up, delightedly asking if these popsicles were made by me personally. I smiled and nodded, saying I was very grateful for everyone's help. Also explained these were made with leftover grain flour, though not as good as store-bought, the taste was pretty decent. The shorter-haired younger sister picked up a popsicle, first handing it to the older sister beside her. Then the two of them tasted it together. Let me see how effective this grain flour popsicle infused with the chef's special sauce for inducing happiness would be. My trap plan was to first spread rumors that helping in the kitchen meant getting to eat delicious snacks, then use this to attract suspicious characters to approach me voluntarily, or arrange for people to come help in the kitchen. Now that I was level 10, handling ordinary awakeners was more than sufficient. I could seize the chance to subdue them. The younger sister said loudly to the older sister that the popsicles were incredibly delicious. Couldn't believe grain flour could produce this kind of taste. The older sister's expression gradually softened. She'd had no expectations at first, but now she acknowledged the popsicles were genuinely good. The younger sister, seeing this, was overjoyed. She noticed the older sister had actually smiled. She mentioned that since their parents passed away, the older sister had never smiled again. The older sister instinctively touched her own face, saying maybe the snacks were too delicious. She suddenly felt much more at ease inside. The younger sister wiped her tears, saying this was truly wonderful. I looked at the sisters before me, my heart full of emotion. After losing both parents, they'd surely been through so much hardship. Though my cooking skills could only briefly influence people's mental state, this kind of positive change might bring deeper lasting effects. Just like the equipment squad ace, after eating the courage-inducing dish back then, he never bowed to fear again. No matter what, these two popsicles achieved the effect I wanted. Next, it was time to officially begin the hunt. That night, I had a secret small meeting with the communications squad leader on the rooftop. The communications squad leader reported that the blonde's little gang were friends who knew each other before the zombie outbreak. All 5 were criminals who had served prison time. I said we couldn't treat everyone as accomplices just based on their close relationship. But thinking from the other angle, there was also the possibility that these 5 had already conspired together. The communications squad leader frowned, looking troubled, asking what to do now. He felt they couldn't just go in and subdue them without any evidence and without actual harm occurring. If it caused panic among other survivors and triggered unrest, it would be terrible. He couldn't bear those consequences. My tone was firm, saying we couldn't just sit and wait to die, only to regret it when danger struck. Then asked him, had he confirmed during the meeting that survivors would assist the unit in handling affairs? The communications squad leader nodded, confirming survivors had all agreed. Also explained currently only simple tasks like cleaning the living quarters and kitchen had been arranged. They weren't given access to core areas. I patted his shoulder, saying just arrange the blonde's little gang to help in the kitchen next. After all, I'd already laid the groundwork. Just use the honesty dish when they came. The communication squad leader still had some doubts, feeling what I said was too easy. He probed, asking besides giving everyone buffs, were there other special abilities? My heart jumped. Didn't expect my secret had already been seen through by him. I was just about to explain when the communication squad leader cut me off. He chose, as always, not to ask me too much and instead chose to trust me, and reminded me not to rely too heavily on my awakening abilities. I was somewhat moved, and promised him I'd be more careful going forward. A few days later in the kitchen, the youngest of the blonde, little gang, the crew cut man, finished cleaning the kitchen. I wiped down the stovetop while casually chatting with him, even praising him for cleaning quickly and thoroughly, then smiled, saying he'd worked hard, told him to eat a snack before leaving. The crew cut man's eyes immediately lit up seeing the popsicle, said this was the legendary, incredibly delicious popsicle, never expected he'd get to eat it too. I was secretly pleased. The plan was going smoothly, the rumor had already spread. The crew cut man said everyone who'd come to help in the kitchen had been showing off how delicious the popsicle was. They'd all been looking forward to their turn to come here. After saying this, he eagerly took a big bite. His face instantly showed a satisfied expression. He said the popsicle had a very special flavor, truly lived up to its reputation. This was a recipe I'd racked my brain to come up with, made with special ingredients specifically for him. Also a novice chef sincerely crafted honest grain flour popsicle, making him involuntarily blurt out the truth. The crew cut man finished the popsicle and still licked his lips with lingering enjoyment, thanking me repeatedly. I kept a smile on my face while already plotting inside. It was time to take formal action. I casually opened my mouth, saying could I ask him something. The crew cut man had just finished the popsicle and was in a good mood. His tone was exceptionally easygoing, telling me to ask whatever I wanted. I casually brought up why he'd specifically been probing others about their previous occupations. The crew cut man instinctively answered, saying because they needed to confirm whether there were any awakeners in the unit. The words barely left his mouth before he froze, then continued uncontrollably. The military had guns and weapons. If someone awakened, they'd have to change their battle plan. But fortunately, no one had awakened. I was secretly delighted. The honest grain flour popsicle's effect had taken hold. Even if he didn't want to talk, he couldn't help but speak the truth. I pressed my advantage and continued, asking what they planned to do if our unit had awakeners. The crew cut man continued speaking uncontrollably. They would first confirm the number of awakeners. If there were many, they'd have no chance in direct confrontation. In that case, they'd quietly infiltrate the unit, hide, and wait for the right moment to act. After blurting out the truth, the crew cut man cursed furiously and turned to run outside. Seeing this, I immediately called out to stop him, saying I still had things to ask. The moment my words landed, the crew cut man's body suddenly stiffened, and he struggled to say to ask away. I didn't waste time firing off the key questions in one breath. How many accomplices did he have, and how many awakeners? The crew cut man's face turned pale as his body uncontrollably revealed the truth. My heart jolted. My previous suspicions were correct after all. All 5 were awakeners. I continued pressing, asking what all 5 of them had come here to actually do. The crew cut man's heart must have been screaming this was terrible, but his body completely wouldn't obey. Could only honestly answer that they wanted to occupy this unit. After several days of observation, they believed this unit had no awakeners, posed no threat to them at all, so they decided to execute the battle plan. And tonight at dusk, they'd execute it. I frowned. Never expected their action would come so fast. The crew cut man also said he'd execute the battle plan as soon as he got back. I was secretly anxious. This absolutely couldn't stand. No matter what, their plan couldn't succeed. But just at this moment, the crew cut man snapped his fingers, saying things had come to this. Looks like he had to execute the plan now. The moment his words fell, his entire body suddenly burst into roaring flames. A scorching wave of heat hit me in the face. Only then did I know he was actually a flame ability user. The crew cut man grinned menacingly, saying he'd been quite flustered earlier, but thinking carefully he felt there was no need to panic. After all, I was just a mess hall cook, whereas he was an awakener, a level 6 flame bearer. The crew cut man made the flames on his body burn even more intensely. Also said no matter how he looked at it, he felt like he'd been played by me. Though things being exposed wasn't great, as long as he killed me, he could still go back and implement the battle plan. After saying this, he thrust both hands forward. A giant fireball came charging straight at me. I let out a cold laugh and stood calmly in place, thinking he really underestimated chefs. After all, a chef was an occupation that works with fire all day long. I directly extended my hand to meet that fireball. The ability within me activated. The originally fierce fireball became docile and was easily dissipated by me. I looked at the dumbfounded crew cut man, my tone ice cold, telling him he'd chosen the wrong opponent. The crew cut man muttered in disbelief that it was absurd. Couldn't believe I could handle his flames with bare hands. I took a deep breath. No need to keep hiding my true abilities anymore. I activated Chef's Eye, a sharp light flashing in my eyes. This ability originally used to see through the essence of ingredients. Now used to observe an enemy's weak points, it worked just the same. At the same time, I drew on the low-tier cooking secret primate cooking method. Though the name sounded strange, applied in combat it could make my movements precise to the extreme. The crew cut man was completely confused about the situation. I pressed my lips together. Somehow a sharp chef's knife had appeared in my hand. I moved my feet, charging rapidly toward him. The crew cut man's face fell, desperately trying to control flames for defense, only to discover his body was once again out of control. What he didn't know was that my cooking abilities could not only influence minds, but also briefly interfere with an opponent's skill activation. The chef's knife in my hand carved after images under the light, movements precise like my usual vegetable cutting, striking straight at his weak points. Just as I was dealing with the crew cut man, the blonde gang had already assembled at the unit's watchtower. Past the agreed time, the crew cut man was still nowhere to be seen. Number 2 said he was the strongest in the team. Without him, none of them felt confident. Blonde impatiently growled in response, saying they still had 4 awakeners, and they'd already confirmed the military side had no awakeners at all, posed absolutely no threat to them. Number 3 was still somewhat uneasy, worried about what ifs. Blonde boss frowned slightly, a flash of hesitation crossing his mind. He knew clearly the crew cut man was indispensable combat strength for them, also had excellent judgment in applying skills, but he thought again. He himself was the team leader, couldn't be led around by the crew cut man alone. He made an excuse saying the crew cut man would definitely rendezvous with them later, then firmly ordered everyone to immediately execute the battle plan. Before long, the survivors in the living quarters were forcibly brought to the open ground outside. Each person's face wore terror, privately whispering in hushed voices, asking what was going on. The female tailor stepped forward, her tone grave as she demanded reasons for this from the blonde. Blonde laughed triumphantly, arrogantly voicing his purpose. Said it was an old habit of his. If he couldn't be the leader of a group, his whole body felt uncomfortable. The female tailor thought to herself that the blonde had been difficult, strange, and violent from the very start. Previously, only because she was an awakener did he behave somewhat more docile toward her. Never expected he was now the same as the beginning again. She opened her mouth to mock the blonde, asking if being the big brother among his own little group wasn't enough for him. Blonde snorted dismissively, saying 5 people as big brother was too few in number. Even the number of people in this survivor group was a bit small. Only by controlling this unit could he be barely satisfied. The female tailor shouted in anger that the blonde was completely hopeless. She thought to herself that she originally didn't want to use force against one of her own, but the blonde's current behavior threatened everyone's safety, had no choice but to act. The regular soldier on duty upstairs, seeing this scene, quickly ran to report to Private Zhu, who was in a meeting. Private Zhu, hearing the situation, immediately wrapped up the meeting and hurried downstairs with the meeting participants. Reaching the first floor hall, he first instructed everyone to observe for now. Initial assessment was this was just internal conflict among survivors. He saw the female tailor search through her pockets for a moment and pulled out 2 sharp scissors. Looked like she was about to come to blows with the blonde. The surrounding people, seeing this, couldn't help exclaiming in surprise, felt the blonde was simply crazy to provoke an awakener. The blonde exaggeratedly retreated 1 step, then grinned menacingly and spoke, saying he'd been observing the female tailor using scissors and knew very well her power, but he felt the female tailor with only 2 scissors couldn't handle him at all. The female tailor's heart sank, realizing something was wrong. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Could the blonde and his group also all be awakeners? At this moment, the tall and burly number 2 stepped forward, telling blonde boss to leave this to him, said he'd clean up the female tailor nicely, but blonde shook his head, saying that woman was still very strong, then instructed number 3 to go up together. Don't give the female tailor any chance. The atmosphere on the open ground instantly became tense as a drawn bow. The female tailor instantly understood the key. No wonder she'd always felt their movements were suspicious. Seeing this, blonde laughed triumphantly. sternly, his tone mocking the female tailor for being dense. Survivors erupted completely. Previously, they treated the Blonde's gang as companions, even protecting them. Blonde couldn't be bothered to deal with them, directly ordering his underlings to give the female tailor a good lesson. Number 2 and Number 3 immediately responded, activating their respective skills. The female tailor's heart tightened. Her mind was full of the ordinary survivors behind her, afraid the battle might affect them. Right then decided she must draw these two people to an open area. Couldn't let others get caught in the crossfire. But Number 2 and Number 3's speed was extremely fast, catching up in an instant. Number 2's fist wrapped in an earthy yellow glow, viciously smashing toward her back. The female tailor reacted quickly, urgently turning to parry with scissors. After a crisp sound, the scissors hummed and vibrated from the impact. Her whole body was also sent stumbling backwards from the huge impact force, before she could even regain her footing. Number 3 swept both hands. Countless golden small spheres flew straight at her. The female tailor gritted her teeth, waving scissors to quickly cut apart the wind blades. But their combat strength was on a completely different level from zombies or monsters. Single-handedly dealing with two awakeners had virtually no chance of winning. Surrounding survivors were also frozen in shock by this scene. One after another, they stood rooted to the spot, not daring to move, could only watch helplessly as the female tailor was surrounded and attacked. Blonde stood in place with arms crossed, a disdainful look on his face. Thought once the female tailor was eliminated, the remaining people would be easy to control. Number 3 reminded Number 2 that the female tailor had previously fought zombies. Her combat strength couldn't be underestimated. Number 2 nodded hearing this, urging Number 3 to be more serious. They'd make it quick. The female tailor's eyes sharpened, not daring to be the least bit careless. Nimbly dodged sideways to avoid Number 2's heavy punch, but barely avoiding this blow, Number 3's power-condensed golden sphere was already smashing hard toward her. Number 3, seeing two attacks hadn't gained advantage, immediately increased magic power to drive the skill, obviously preparing to deliver a fatal blow to the female tailor. Just at this critical moment, a crisp gunshot suddenly split the night air. Number 2 and Number 3 instinctively stopped their movements. The female tailor also turned her head in surprise to look. Blonde had completely not anticipated any soldier would dare step forward to intervene, only to see Private Shu holding a rifle, followed by a group of fully armed soldiers rapidly charging this way, quickly surrounding the Blonde's group from all sides. Private Shu sternly commanded everyone to stop. The female tailor breathed a sigh of relief, slowly lowering her scissors and raising both hands. Number 2 and Number 3, seeing this, could only reluctantly stop their attack and raise their hands. Private Shu steadily aimed the gun barrel at the Blonde, but the Blonde didn't show the slightest fear. Instead, his face showed an increasingly arrogant air. Obviously, certain soldiers wouldn't dare easily shoot ordinary civilians. Private Shu wasn't intimidated by his bravado. His tone remained firm as he stated this was a special situation. As long as they determined the other side to be enemies, they could open fire, and absolutely would not hold back. Blonde instead stepped one pace forward, approaching the gun barrel, throwing out. If the unit treated them as enemies and attacked, everyone would just have to fight it out. Private Shu was privately alert, had to figure out why he dared confront soldiers aiming guns at him. Awakeners were indeed formidable, but hadn't become strong enough to win against guns. What on earth gave him such confidence? Blonde's tone was full of provocation, pressing Private Shu to open fire. Also mocked soldiers as just a bunch of kids around 20. Surrounding soldiers muttered that the Blonde must be crazy, actually voluntarily asking to be shot. All looked toward Private Shu, waiting for him to make a decision. Private Shu took a deep breath, saying he'd already warned the Blonde. His eyes became resolute, finger closing on the trigger, about to aim at the Blonde and pull the trigger. The civilians on the scene, seeing this, panicked, screamed in succession. Just at this crucial moment, Private Shu couldn't fire. No matter how he exerted force, the trigger wouldn't budge, like something was jamming it. Both sides fell into a standoff. A calm and triumphant smile appeared on the Blonde's face. Private Shu was completely puzzled. Surrounding soldiers and civilians also found it strange. Blonde smiled and took back his earlier words, calling Private Shu a kid. After all, Private Shu was genuinely willing to fire, but they had no way to fire on him, because his skill was lowest tier flame interference ability, meaning he could interfere with flames or phenomena related to flames around him. Very quickly, the surrounding soldiers shouted out in surprise one after another, all saying their triggers also couldn't be pressed, simply couldn't fire. Blonde explained triumphantly that guns ultimately relied on fire to function. Gunpowder had to explode first to fire bullets, and all flames and explosions were useless against him. He could directly interfere with these phenomena occurring. Only then did Private Shu suddenly understand. Turns out his ability happened to counter firearms. Number 2 excitedly shouted out, endlessly praising Blonde boss as amazing, saying ordinary soldiers were no match for awakeners like them at all. The female tailor's heart was filled with worry. If this continued, the unit would sooner or later fall into the Blonde's hands. Blonde's tone reached the peak of arrogance, announcing from now on he was taking over the unit, also ordering everyone to kneel. At this moment, Private Shu suddenly laughed, reflecting that he'd been worried for nothing. Soldiers also showed relaxed expressions one after another. Then Private Shu arranged people to support the female tailor. Deal with the small fry first. Blonde expression darkened, sternly scolding, saying regular people facing awakeners, no matter how many, was useless. Told them not to do anything foolish and quickly surrender. Private Shu couldn't be bothered wasting words with him, instructed the soldiers beside him to give him a lesson. Soldiers immediately responded, charging toward the Blonde. Blonde completely didn't put soldiers in his eyes, immediately activated his skill to give soldiers something to think about. But the opponent's fist speed far exceeded his expectations. With a whooshing sound, it smashed hard into his cheek. After a muffled thud, he was sent flying straight by a single punch, flew several meters, crashed heavily to the ground. The Blonde struggled trying to get up, only to find strength had completely drained from his body. Only then did he realize the unit actually had awakeners too. They'd been completely deceived. Survivors showed surprised expressions expressions one after another. The blonde's gang was scared pale with fright. The female tailor laughed excitedly. The soldier who threw the punch shook out his fist, saying the blonde went down after just one hit. Other soldiers chimed in saying the blonde was really weak, couldn't figure out what he'd been so arrogant about before. The blonde lay on the ground thoroughly dazed. The awakeners here were far stronger than they'd imagined. Private Shu comforted the surrounding survivors, saying it was all over. Everyone could relax. Also asked if any survivors were injured, told those who were fine to return to the dormitory to rest, leaving the rest to them to handle. Then Private Shu pointed at number 2, 3, and 4 who were shaking all over in fright, instructed soldiers to bring them over too. The whole group thus knelt under the gun barrels. At this time, the communication squad leader also hurried over, asking what had happened. Private Shu explained to the communication squad leader that he'd received an urgent internal report from soldiers, saying survivors had a conflict, so he immediately rushed over. The communication squad leader's gaze swept over the subdued blonde and his group, thinking to himself that things had indeed gone as I'd anticipated. Besides the female tailor, there were 5 more awakeners, but they were nothing special at all, no match for the unit. Private Shu's tone was grave as he responded that these people not only deceived everyone, but also planned to seize the unit by force. Saying this, he looked around, puzzled, asking why the remaining youngest wasn't seen. Just at this moment, I appeared in the distance carrying the unconscious crew cut man, and limped over staggering, smiling, saying, looks like they've all been dealt with. Truly well done, everyone. I tossed the crew cut man on the ground, saying he looked a bit rough but not to worry, just knocked out, nothing serious. The ace, looking at the motionless crew cut man, complimented my combat strength, was getting stronger and stronger. The blonde's whole gang, seeing the crew cut man's sorry state, was instantly stunned. After all, the crew cut man was the strongest among them. Blonde especially never imagined a mess hall soldier could be this formidable. The communications squad leader reminded me to show restraint next time, don't actually beat someone to death. I scratched my head, explaining I'd already tried to hit as lightly as possible, thinking my usual attack method had too much destructive power. This time, I deliberately switched to the fish cooking method for knocking living creatures unconscious. Never expected he still ended up looking like this. The communication squad leader looked disdainful, saying the strongest of the 5 actually had only this little strength. Just how weak were they? Private Shu smiled, and proudly responded that should be, because everyone had become too strong. The equipment squad ace analyzed that brothers who awakened earlier in the unit had all reached level 5 or 6. He himself was now past level 10. The other side simply couldn't compare. Private Shu agreed, adding that they also had the token's boost, could increase fixed ability values. The system initially made everyone jump straight from level 1 to level 5, though the leveling efficiency slows down going forward. I smiled, telling everyone it seemed even without me around there was no problem now. The communication squad leader immediately objected, saying it was because I'd been constantly feeding everyone all kinds of powerful dishes that nurtured them this strong. Even joked that they should call me the unit's mother. I awkwardly smiled, saying that would be way too weird. At this moment, the female tailor walked over, a knowing smile on her face. I quickly greeted the female tailor, saying it was wonderful she was okay. The female tailor smiled, saying she was fine, thanks to the unit having healers. After some simple treatment, she was good. She also said it was a bit scary just now, but was very grateful to everyone for protecting them. Without us, they probably would have been done for. I was somewhat embarrassed, apologizing to the female tailor, saying before knowing those guys' true nature and intentions, there was no choice but to hide the identities of awakeners. Hope she could understand. The female tailor nodded, saying she understood, that being cautious in special circumstances was appropriate. Then curiously asked if everyone in the unit was an awakener. I honestly answered that until not long ago, awakeners in the unit had just passed half. Now there should be over 50 people awakened. I introduced myself as a chef, and added there were many awakeners of different occupations in the unit. Everyone fulfilled their own role and cooperated very smoothly. The next day, I came to the kitchen basement, asking the guard soldier how the blonde's gang was doing. The soldier responded that he'd been worried earlier they might escape, but they probably also felt they couldn't, so they'd been very well behaved. No movement at all. I nodded satisfactorily, then asked which room the crew cut man was in. The soldier pointed to the innermost room. I stated I wanted to personally interrogate them. The soldier worriedly asked if I'd be okay alone. I shook my head, saying no need, said I was quite the interrogation expert. Then smiling, I pushed open the prison cell door. The crew cut man, seeing me walk in, shuddered in fright. I greeted him warmly, saying I was just here to chat. No need to be scared. Explained I came looking for him because there were a few things I wanted to ask his help with, asking if he was willing. The crew cut man immediately knelt on the ground, repeatedly begging me to spare his life, saying he'd never dare again and would obediently listen going forward. I muttered inwardly, seems the last beating had really left him deeply traumatized. I pulled out a pastry from my pocket, telling him as long as he listened to me properly, he wouldn't get beaten again. This special pastry's honesty effect was extraordinarily good. After the crew cut man ate it, he became exceptionally forthright and laid everything out honestly. Their group were originally criminals operating around Gangwon-do area, normally idle, making a living through extortion. Later monsters appeared, the world descended into chaos, and information about awakening slowly spread among survivors. But they found it was very difficult to establish their own force without legitimate reasons, because no one was willing to follow a group of criminals. So they finally decided, with the blonde as the leader, to form a clique, disguised as ordinary survivors, then slowly absorb other small survivor groups to build up their own strength. I suddenly understood understood. Turns out they'd come with a plan from the very beginning, deliberately hiding their awakener identities and joining the female tailors group just to infiltrate our unit. I continued pressing, wanting to know the specific methods they use to absorb others' forces. After all, it shouldn't be easy to take over someone else's group. The crew cut man explained that the blonde had mental interference type skills, could easily stir up everyone's emotions, drive away the original leader, then they'd seize the opportunity to take over the entire group. I was secretly astounded. These guys actually used such despicable means to expand their power, truly stopped at nothing. The crew cut man said they believed absorbing the unit would not only get them guns but also a large amount of supplies. When facing other forces in the future, they could also hold an absolute advantage, a plan that killed 3 birds with 1 stone. I also finally understood why my fellow countrymen had previously told us to hide our strength. If from the very beginning they'd known the number and true strength of the unit's awakeners, they would have lurked and spread like cancer cells. By then the trouble would really have been enormous. I couldn't help starting to think about what to do with these 5 people. Killing them was a waste, but releasing them feared they'd keep doing evil. Just as I was thinking about how to deal with those 5 people, the company commander came rushing over excitedly, saying he'd followed instructions and comforted the survivors. I thought to myself, his talent for communication was really useful, saved a lot of trouble. After reporting, the company commander didn't leave quickly. Instead, he showed an expression of wanting credit, saying he'd worked especially hard, asked if I could make some late-night food as compensation. His withdrawal symptoms from my cooking were getting more and more severe, even more extreme than an addiction. The company commander, seeing I hadn't agreed, quickly waved his hands apologizing, saying his request was too much, also explained he was just joking. I calculated that there was more than enough lizard meat anyway. Cooking it for him was fine. It'd also nicely appease him so he'd work more diligently going forward. So I told him he'd handled it very well. Of course I could make some late-night food as a reward. The company commander instantly beamed, excitedly saying thank you so much. He'd also handle everything I entrusted to him well going forward. I told him to go sit in the dining hall and wait. I'd bring it over once it was ready. Watching his figure joyfully scurrying off, I suddenly had an idea. Anyway, leaving the blonde and his gang unattended, they'd just consume food in the prison cell with no use at all. Plus they were people too, couldn't really kill them. Education and rehabilitation was the best approach. Might as well let those 5 people become addicted to my cooking just like the company commander. After making the late-night meal, I deliberately made 5 extra portions and brought them to the basement prison cells. The blonde, seeing the food, initially still showed resistance, but smelling the food's aroma, his stomach started growling. In the end, he couldn't help eating in big mouthfuls. The other underlings, seeing the food, wolfed it down, completely forgetting their status as prisoners. System notification suddenly sounded. Using the power of cooking to completely tame a group assembled with evil attributes. Received title reward Chef of Redemption. Effect was that cooking effects increased 30% when facing monsters or occupations with evil attributes. Afterward, I brought them out of the basement, had them join the unit as rookies to turn over a new leaf, arranged for them to do miscellaneous tasks like transporting supplies and cleaning, rewarding them with food. I asked the equipment squad ace beside me what he thought of those rookie new soldiers. The equipment squad ace smiled, saying they adapted especially well, worked quite diligently, and hadn't caused trouble again. Though they were a bit older, the unit inevitably had older new soldiers. Slowly teaching was fine. I nodded satisfactorily, saying this matter could thus be considered smoothly concluded. Before they completely turned over a new leaf, let them continue as rookies to be put through more training. Just as I was chatting with the equipment squad ace, the communication squad leader came rushing over in a hurry. My heart sank, had a bad feeling. Asked what had happened so urgently. The communication squad leader's tone was rapid, saying they'd done their best to collect remaining gasoline in the unit, but it was almost depleted. Excluding gasoline for vehicles, the remaining fuel could only sustain the generator for 1 more week. After a week, there would be a complete power outage. I frowned, saying things were looking bad. Food was also almost gone. After all, the unit's resources were already tight. The addition of survivors had further accelerated the consumption rate. The communications squad leader sighed, saying at this rate they couldn't hold out much longer. I was silent for a moment, and after weighing the pros and cons, made a decision, said we had to prepare to leave the unit. That night, I gathered small group members together. Seeing the food I'd prepared, everyone was surprised. Someone said, "Looks like we're getting special treatment again." Also marveled that I could make something like this in the unit. It was practically a work of art. But Private Chu raised a question, saying, hadn't I mentioned ingredients were insufficient? If only they were eating this well, it didn't seem quite right. I explained that actually these were all lizard meat. The moment the words fell, everyone's chopsticks suddenly froze mid-motion, dazed for a split second, then on the spot started gagging and retching.